Hello and welcome to the Fantasy Life Show, Week 4 Recap Edition. I'm your host, Ian Hartitz. It is a great day to be great. It's a great day to break down all of the action from an ever-eventful NFL Sunday. And joining me, as always, to do just that, the one, the only Fantasy Life Director of Analytics, Dwain, The Rock McFarland. Dwain, isn't it impressive that I can still be that hyped and optimistic, even though our fantasy dreams absolutely crumbled today?
Yeah, man. But we're just like everyone else. We gotta figure out how do we climb out of this hole known as Rashee Rice and what potentially happened with the knee. All we know right now is Andy Reid just said it didn't look good. But our bags are heavy, Ian, and our hearts are hanging low, but we're gonna figure it out. We do have a lot of news today. There's a lot of different things that are going on. Not saying it's gonna replace Rashee Rice one for one, but there are definitely some players that we got to get into that are available quite often on the waiver wires, depending on how deep your league is. Some of you, it's going to be not in my league. Well, we're going to try. We're going to try, guys.
Find out one thing, Dwain, is that America loves to come back. So let's watch the film get better. And with that, get into it. Starting off with the Vikings taking down the Packers 31-29. Minnesota closed as 2.5-point dogs, and the over did cash with ease at 44. High scoring Sunday afternoon, especially in the early slate, which was great to see. So Vikings obviously jumped out to a huge lead in this one, Dwain. 28-0 start. Sam Darnold was a big reason why. 275 yards and 3 touchdowns through the air. Did have a pair of turnovers. Again, the Packers were able to, have that late comeback going on, but another impressive performance from Sam Darnold. Aaron Jones, 139 scoreless yards. Justin Jefferson had a sweet one-handed touchdown on an arguably even better throw from Darnold in the corner of the end zone.
That was so sick.
It was sweet, man. 85 yards. Jordan Addison, pair of touchdowns and 79 total yards in his return. Really another quality performance from the Vikings offense, Dwain. Got a little tight there at the end, but again, just another really, we keep kind of waiting for the clock to strike midnight on the Sam Darnold fairy tale story, but here we are entering week 5, Dwain, and not yet.
And we still haven't seen a truly competitive game script wire to wire for Sam Darnold. We saw him get pushed at the end of this game. He ends up with 275 passing yards. I mean, I'm not going to say that somebody here didn't take the 279 teaser along with the Jordan Addison teaser. And I had the Jaden Reed teaser. Like, it would have all hit. It would have been that it's like the wife and kids as they're walking out and leaving you, forever kind of thing. Like, the process was right. The process was so right. Like, this is the game, but still, the point being, Sam Darnold looks great. The back shoulder throw was kind of an Aaron Rodgers eat your heart out kind of moment. I mean, that's just a dot. Sam Darnold's for real, guys. He's for real. I know Derek Carr, maybe we got a little ahead of ourselves. We'll talk about him more later, but Sam Darnold with Kevin O'Connell, with Justin Jefferson, you now get Jordan Addison back. Nothing big to add here, but it's still very clearly, the Justin Jefferson show. Jordan Addison, target share not super high, Ian, but just like what we talked about, this dude can shake some people and he can get deep. He can score touchdowns. They're using him on end arounds. So he's a playmaker that can come through for you in any game. The big thing I would say here on the Vikings side of the ball, the biggest takeaway is really over the last 2 games, we have seen the emergence really of Aaron Jones. I don't know if it's just a dude that anytime he shows up wearing the poncho or whatever, or, it's the revenge game this week, if that means more work. But remember, early in the first 2 games, we're kind of like, this is almost more like a 1A, 1B kind of thing between him and Ty Chandler. The last 2 games, not so much, Ian. 71% of the team's rushing attempts, 72% snap share, 57% route participation. So those are high-end running back 1 numbers over the last 2 games for Aaron Jones, playing in an offense that we absolutely love right now.
Wish we could have seen Jones get into the end zone because he said he was going to try to do a Lambeau leap. Would have been fun to see how that was, appreciated by the Packers faithful. But again, really strong start to the year for the artist known as Aaron. So Vikings Jets in London next week, Dwain, 9:30 a.m. Eastern. So let us be the first to tell you guys to make sure to get those lineups finalized before that goes down. So only major question I would have here, Dwain, is just Jordan Addison back to his full-time role?
Yeah, he was back in the full-time role. Nothing else to hit there. I mean, the snaps were a little low, but it's the routes that we care about for Addison. Jalen Naylor really went to a reserve role with Addison back.
Makes sense. All right, on the other side of the football, again, looked dire in Green Bay, down 4 touchdowns. But man, Jordan Love certainly went out swinging, wound up racking up 389 yards through the air, 4 touchdowns and 3 interceptions. Was rocking the Brett Favre jersey before the game, and I saw a tweet that was like, man, what a great, dedication to Brett Favre with the stat line like that. So again, went out there, made some big plays happen. Jaden Reed, 139 yards and a touchdown. Dontavian Wicks, Dwain, 78 yards and 2 scores on 13 targets. Arguably could have have even had a third touchdown. It wasn't a great throw by Love, but it seemed like Wicks came back to it, maybe had a hand slow him down. Either way, ball ended up hitting him in the shoulder pads, whoever you want to end up blaming on that one. So with Wicks, Dwain, obviously probably wasn't a coincidence we saw that role expand after Christian Watson sadly suffered another bad lower body injury, being called an ankle for it right now. And yeah, it did not look good the way he was twisted up. So I did see a bit of Bo Melton out there as well. So what did the Packers wide receiver rotation look like after Watson was out, Dwain?
Yeah, a little bit of Bo Melton as well, but Wicks ended up at an 80% route participation rate. Ian, he had a 24% target share, which led the team. That was well above Jaden Reed, who was sitting at 15% for the day. 35% air yard share also led the team. If we don't have Christian Watson next weekend, he will rank as a wide receiver 2. Like, he's going to be a wide receiver 2 in our ranks. Look, the guy has shown us, yes, it was a small sample last season, that he's a really good player. Well, now he's just backing it up right away, right out of the gate here. Even in week 1, when we had Jordan Love, we saw a little bit of a flash there from Dontavian Wicks. So if we don't have Watson, and look, we hope Watson gets better. Like, we totally hope he's better. But my thought on this is, I don't know that Dontavian Wicks is going to give the role back. I mean, I think that this could be one of those situations where he gets on the field, he takes it, it's his for the rest of the season, just because he's playing so good, Ian. So he's available right now in 87% of Yahoo leagues. I will say he's going to be the ad of the week. Like, this is a guy, I get it. You may not know how long Christian Watson's going to be out, so we'll have to wait for that information. If we find out that Christian Watson, has a really serious injury that's going to end his season, again, hope that's not the case, then it's all in. You're going all in on Dontavian Wicks. If it's a situation where we think that Christian Watson is going to be out 2 to 4 games and maybe we get like a high ankle sprain, I still think, Ian, he's a 25 to 50% guy, because I think this opens the door for Dontavian Wicks just to take over that starting role. Okay, so I mean, look, it's just one of these situations where it's a really good player. He's now getting his opportunity. So you guys, again, only rostered in 87% of Yahoo leagues. So he's somebody you're going to really want to pay attention to on the waiver wire this week, especially if you have Rashee Rice. Like, Dontavian Wicks is going to be someone you're going to want to go hard after.
So looking at the target totals, though, Dwain, 13 for Wicks, 8 for Reed, 9 for Tucker Kraft, and 8 for Romeo Doubs. Look, just briefly, the matchup next week, it's against the Rams, so that's fantastic. So when you do say wide receiver 2, okay, I can see that. But Jaden Reed still looking a lot like the wide receiver 1 in Green Bay. I mean, he's now played 2 games with Jordan Love. He's had over 140 freaking total yards, and both of them. Look, Dwain, I like to consider myself a ball knower, and we all know ball knowers love themselves some Dontavian Wicks, but Reed's the highest ranked Packers fantasy wide receiver, right?
I think so, but I don't think they're going to be that far apart if Wicks takes over this starting role. I mean, he out-targeted him today. He's playing more. That's the problem for Jaden Reed, is that they want to limit his playing time. And this is going to open up a little bit more playing time for Reed as well. With Christian Watson out, that's one less player in the rotation. Although, like you mentioned earlier, we did see a little bit of Bo Melton out there today. He had 11% route participation. But I would not be surprised if Dontavian Wicks and Jaden Reed are neck and neck, to be honest. Like, I really do think Dontavian Wicks is a good player. I'm with you. I would still give the lean to Jaden Reed, but I think that Wicks is the guy that I want, right there, just behind Reed in this offense. And that's no disrespect to Doubs. Doubs, for where he was drafted, like, has been a fine player, but he's really like a floor. You're hoping to get his targets kind of guy. He did have some big games in the playoffs last year, guys. I was front row for one of them, so don't start screaming at me. I saw the guy dicing up the Cowboys secondary with Jordan Love back there buying time. So I've seen what Doubs is capable of. But over Dobbs' career, like, his targets per route run, all those things really say he's like a wide receiver 4. I think there's a chance Wicks might really be a potential wide receiver 1, and we just don't know it yet.
Dobbs does have that floor, but what do we chase in fantasy land, Dwain? That's right, those waterfalls, that ceiling outcome, which certainly Wicks, I believe, has the better chance of getting up to. So as we know, though, a passing game capable of many good things, and Tucker Kraft was part of that today, had a sweet touchdown where he broke several tackles. And I mean, that's really been a trend for him in his short 2-year career. So Luke Musgrave is fine, good seam stretcher, but man, I would be awfully excited to see Tucker Kraft walk away with an every down role at some point. Did we get that today?
He's got it. Yeah.
Oh,
he's got it. He's really taken it over the last couple of weeks. He just hasn't been that strong of a target earner yet in his career, except in games where everyone else is hurt. So I don't know how much it's going to mean, but in a year where, like, we don't know anything about tight end, I feel like everything you thought you knew, you just throw it out the window. Other than we know Trey McBride's still going to be good, guys. Travis Kelce, obviously, we'll talk about him more here in a little bit with the upgrade he's going to get now. But Tucker Kraft did have a 17% target share today. I still think of him like as that mid-range tight end 2, but we might be talking about him like as a borderline tight end 1 here before long. I just think it's tough. I do think these other guys are better target earners than him.
What are his routes? Because I'm just looking at last couple of weeks.
86%. Sorry, I should have said that out of the gate.
That's fantastic.
Yeah, that's elite. That's fantastic.
Last week, I think he was banged up with a little something at the end of last week, but just a 56% route rate then. So, man, 86% for a player like Tucker Kraft, who truly is good. Guys, Dontavian Wicks is going to be stealing the waiver wire, headlines and covers, deservedly so. But Tucker Kraft, do not sleep on him if you need some help at tight end. Final point here, Dwain, because it is such a fantasy-friendly offense. Josh Jacobs, not a bad game by any stretch, 78 scoreless yards on 13 touches. But, man, this Emmanuel Wilson guy is not going away.
Yeah, this is becoming a problem right now for Josh Jacobs. So Emmanuel Wilson, over the last 2 games, Ian, here are your splits. Josh Jacobs, 56% of the snaps. Emmanuel Wilson, 41%. 41% of the rushing attempts to Josh Jacobs. Now, remember, Malik Willis is mixed into one of these games here as well. So he was getting some of those design carries, 36% for Wilson. Then you look at the route participation, 47% for Josh Jacobs, 26% for Wilson, 10% target share for Jacobs, and a 4% for Wilson. So Jacobs still in the lead here, Ian, but that's getting a little bit closer to that 1A, 1B territory. I would still call that a 1-2. But they're really starting to converge. And remember, this is Matt LaFleur that we're talking about. He's a guy that since he's been in Green Bay, he has never given his number one running back 61% or more, or over 61% of the rushing attempts. He's shown us he clearly wants to rotate players. And this has even been through periods of time where we could clearly see that Aaron Jones was a far superior player to A.J. Dillon. And what's funny is Emmanuel Wilson actually looks pretty good. So now he actually has a running back too. Actually, Emmanuel Wilson looks better than Josh Jacobs on some of these plays right now. So not saying that's going to be the case long-term, guys, but it is a situation where we're seeing them converge, and we've got a coach that's had a history of doing this, Ian. So I do think Emmanuel Wilson playing well is something that LaFleur is going to think about. And looking at Josh Jacobs, he's going to get a slight downgrade this week in the utilization report. We're not going to abandon ship because he's still in a really good offense, and we know how quickly things can change. But just heading into next week, I do think this has to be a little bit of a downgrade looking at these last 2 weeks.
Jacobs is looking good too, guys, but Dwain is not smoking too much of whatever it is, because Emmanuel Wilson coming into this week was 4th in the NFL in missed tackles forced per touch. So certainly earning some of those extra touches. And Dwain, I'm even old enough to remember when Matt LaFleur was in Tennessee, splitting reps between Derrick Henry and Dion Lewis of all people. So yes, the man does like to use his 2 running back systems. But again, great day to be a Vikings fan. 4-0. Very excited to get Paul Charchian's thoughts on this on the Monday morning edition of the Fantasy Life show. Dwain, let's go from one of the most exciting games of the day to the exact opposite. The Broncos took down the Jets 10-9. Denver, closing this one as +8 dogs. The under cash with ease at 39.5. So top performers, none. Yeah, I think we can just move on. Okay. Bo Nix is just a winner, Dwain. That's what happens. He had 60 yards and 1 touchdown. The Cortland Sutton out there, unironically, had negative passing yards at halftime, which is something I don't think I've ever seen in the NFL before. Cortland Sutton with 3 catches for 60 yards and said touchdown was the only Broncos wide receiver with more than 3 total receiving yards. That's what we're dealing with today. Javonte Williams did lead the backfield, 16 carries for 77 scoreless yards. There was a scary situation where Tyler Beatty, I believe, collapsed on the sideline. They called it a back injury eventually. Hope he gets better. So, Dwain, again, I think we've seen enough from the Broncos offense to know we cannot really expect any level of consistent fantasy production. Anything you really want to go over here? I mean, it's pretty sad in Denver.
Cortland Sutton somehow scratched out 13.5 fantasy points in a half PPR and 15 full PPR fantasy points in a game where his quarterback threw for 60 yards. So I guess pulling a rabbit out of his head, as Jason Witten would say. I don't know how he did that, but congrats to you, Cortland Sutton, with a 36% target share today. I will say if Bo Nix could get consistent, Sutton these last couple of games has really been looking like the clear number 1 here. So that would be the only thing. The only one other real quick note on the Broncos side, and we can move on, Ian. Let's please move on. We should be really quick with the Jets as well. But Javonte Williams handled 55% of the rushing attempts today, 59% of the offensive snaps. And it is Tyler Bidet. I actually heard that is the correct pronunciation from Mr. Tyler Bidet. So yeah, prayers up to him and his family. Collapsed on the sideline after he had taken a pretty brutal hit, where he looked a little bit woozy on the field. So hopefully he is okay. But yeah, Javonte's still looking like the running back 1 for the Broncos, whatever that's worth. I can't even tell you what that's worth, Ian. Not very much.
Broncos at home against the Raiders next week. That could be
well,
one of
maybe
those
it'll be
rare
worth
games.
something. That could be worth something.
About to say, only so many games where the Broncos might be home favorites. That could be one of them. Over on the Jets side of things, again, they scored 9 points. You guys don't need me to tell you it wasn't the best offensive effort in the world. 225 scoreless yards for Aaron Rodgers. And really the most concerning part here, Dwayne, was the backfield usage. Just 18 scoreless yards on 12 touches for Breece Hall. Meanwhile, Braylon Allen going for 46 yards on his 9 touches. Breece did get stuffed at the goal line twice. And when asked after the game, head coach Robert Saleh said, I'm not using Braylon on the goal line instead. Definitely something we can look at. But like I've said, we are always going to lean on Breece. He is our workhorse back. So I believe Breece has the capabilities to be a workhorse back, Dwayne. But let's face it, over these last few weeks, things have started to slowly but surely trend towards Braylon Allen. What is your level of concern to all the Breece Hall fantasy managers out there?
I'm not too concerned, and the primary reason why is his utilization in the passing game is absolutely, it's elite. So even if he gives up a little bit of the carries to Braylon Allen, would we rather have all of it? Yeah, guys, we want all of it because that's how you break fantasy. That's how you get a CMC year. You're probably not getting that, out of Breece Hall this year as long as Braylon Allen is in the equation, but you still have a guy you're going to be very glad that you drafted as a top 6 pick in your fantasy league. This was just a week, where it got him. There's going to be weeks where you're going to have duds. We don't expect them to be as bad as what they were. But to your point, Ian, over the last 2 games, we've had 13 rushing attempts on average for Breece Hall and 9.5 for Braylon Allen. So that's not ideal. No. It's really not ideal. But again, when you look at the route participation, that's all going to Breece Hall. That's why the snaps are still really in Breece Hall's favor, 71% to 32%. So I think he's fine because of the involvement in the receiving game. He's just not going to break fantasy this year because Braylon Allen's pretty good at football.
Pretty good indeed. That dude is a freaking freight truck in the open field. And again, it maybe would make sense to get him a bit more involved on the goal line. Maybe could have helped the Jets out there today. So as I mentioned, full on disappointing effort from the Jets offense, which means it also applies once again to Garrett Wilson. 5 catches, 41 scoreless yards. And also, I believe, yes, lost a fumble on his first catch of the day. So, Allen Lazard, Dwayne, inevitable at this point. 5 catches, 58 yards. Mike Williams led the way with 67 yards, had actually a very nice contested catch at one point down the sideline. So looking healthier, and that's great. But at a minimum, Dwayne, as much as we knew this was a tough matchup coming in against Patrick Surtain and company, this is not looking like the runaway wide receiver 1 from a volume perspective show that we maybe thought it was going to be with Garrett Wilson.
I still think it's going to be. The dude's got, what's he sitting at now for the season? Hang on, I'm looking at it. Like he had a 19% target share today. Okay. But he also had the Patrick Surtain treatment. So if we look at this like objectively, and we're going back to week 1, he is pretty much running away with it. He's got a 26% target share. The next closest player is at 18%. Like that's a pretty big gap. I won't be surprised if Garrett Wilson finishes with a 30% target share on the season, somewhere between 25 and 30%. That means he's still going to be a wide receiver 1. It's going to hurt, his overall score for the end of the year. Like how high can Garrett Wilson finish when he's done this bad over the first 4 weeks? Like it's going to hurt him. But when we say rest of season outlook, we're like, okay, starting tomorrow, guys, and going the rest of the way, like how would we rank these players? Garrett Wilson's still a wide receiver 1 for me. I know people are probably tired of hearing it, but we've talked about it. We've talked about how tough these matchups were going to be, out of the gate. And so what's next week? I think we have one more. Jesus, I can't even remember.
It's more than one, honestly.
Yeah. Right. How many more is it?
Vikings next week in London. Then they got a tough Bills defense. Then they got the Steelers. Then
I'm not as worried about the Vikings. They don't have a shutdown. They're a good defense, but they don't have a shutdown corner. Who's the one after that? Sorry.
Buffalo. Good whole defense. We've seen them cause a lot
good
of
hole, but I think he'll be okay. Does he have another shadow? That could be, that Porter.
And the Patriots again. And then after that, it's cool.
Jesus. Well, I think we'll be good for the next couple of weeks, but look, it is what it is. Like he started slow. I don't think this has anything to do with Garrett Wilson not being a great football player, though. I still think he is.
I have a feeling, Dwayne, once we start getting into fantasycalc.com and seeing some of the trades Garrett Wilson is going for, we will be big fans of buying low on him on the old.
We have been so far.
Hey, we're going to keep going. That train might be, heading off the cliff, but Dwayne and I are hang on tight at this point. So it hasn't been great for Garrett Wilson. We realize it, but hey, at the end of the day, at least Aaron Rodgers is healthy under center and his arm is continuing to function. So I guess the only other final point, Dwayne, would be 8 more targets.
Function? Is that the best you can say?
That's the best I got right now, man. Look, they had a 50-yard field goal. They could have won the game. We'd have better.
Here's the takeaway. The Broncos defense is legit.
Yeah. That is true.
Broncos defense is legit. I think we just have to say that right now. I mean, look, anytime you have one cornerback that can take away the best player from the other team and all the rest of the defense gets to focus on what you have left, that's really good for your scheme. I'm just saying, like, it helps quite a bit. So
Tyler Conklin, another 8 targets. Another guy that, again, if you are desperate in those tight end streets, Dwayne, he's, arguably AFC, Kate Otten, that gets a few more targets. But hey,
that's a great comp. AFC, Kate Otten. He's slightly better than Kate Otten, but it's pretty. You're right. It's pretty much the same thing.
Had a hell of a lot better day than Kyle Pitts, which I'm going to just continue to say about every. Mike Gesicki had -9 receiving yards today, and he had more PPR points than Kyle Pitts. So that's kind of what we're working with at this point. Okay, enough of that matchup, guys. The Bengals took down the Panthers 34-24. Cincy covered as 5-point faves. The over cashed at 46.5. I'm accordingly wearing my shout out homage Joe Cool Burrow shirt. Freaking love Snoopy doing his thing over there. So really it was, I don't want to say the biggest get right performance for Cincy, because even while they were losing, we have seen their offense firing, at a pretty high level, especially over these past 2 weeks. But Joe Burrow, 232 yards and a pair of touchdowns through the air, had some really cool, plays where he was moving in the pocket and looking healthy, got himself in trouble with one ill-advised interception, but certainly had a couple other really cool plays to make up for that. Chase Brown, though, Dwayne, really ended up being, the star of the day, I guess we could say. 80 yards on the ground, 2 touchdowns as well. Meanwhile, Zach Moss, yes, still being plenty involved with 19 touches, but only found the end zone once as a receiver and then racked up, 78 total yards. So, hey, we heard all offseason 1A, 1B in the Cincinnati backfield. I know it looked like it was trending more heavily towards Zach Moss, Dwayne, but maybe, just maybe, are these Chase Brown shares not wasted just yet?
Yeah, it looks like that. Look, Zach Moss for the first 3 games was dominating everything, but you kind of look underneath, the hood here, and you look at Chase Brown, you look at his snaps over the last 3 games, Ian, 18% to 23% to 42%. That's a nice little trend. Attempts have gone from 20% to 37% to 48%. So almost half of them today. And then route participation, 12%, and a bump to 34%. The other thing is they haven't let him sniff the field when they're inside the 5-yard line. Today, they gave him 2 of the 3 carries inside the 5. He scored twice. Mm-hmm. One of them was a wide open hole no one could have missed, but the other one, was a little nicer run, by Chase Brown. So, yeah, the Bengals, to your point, that staff told us all year this was going to be a 1A, 1B. We're not all the way to that. I wouldn't say we can't pronounce it yet, but this week, it definitely was more that way, and we're trending in that direction. So looking at Chase Brown, he's a guy that got released quite a bit in the smaller leagues. Now, he's still rostered around 60% of the time on Yahoo, but in some of the leagues, for some of you folks listening, he's going to be out there, and he's a name that we should really look at. I know my son, Camden, he came to me last week, and he had a tough cut decision. He had to cut Chase Brown. He had to do it. I mean, his team's pretty loaded, but at the same time, we were sitting there watching the game together today, and he's like, of course I cut Chase Brown. I'm like, yeah, you're going to have to go back and pick him back up. So, because look, he picked up he has Bucky Irving. He picked up Bucky Irving. I think that was the pickup. I can't remember. But, I don't know. Those are kind of similar now. Those things are really close. I think Bucky Irving, we'll talk about him more later. He's also trending in a very positive direction, but Chase Brown looking good, Ian.
I'm just imagining Camden watching the game. There goes Chase Brown for another touchdown. This is the worst day ever. It's just like that Simpsons meme where Dwayne's like, no, it's the worst day of your life so far, Camden. Okay, we're going to have worse mistakes after that. So Bengals wide receivers, Jamar Chase had a sweet 63-yard touchdown where he broke 3 tackles, but only 6 targets on the day because T. Higgins was getting featured for his get-right game, just like I predicted. Sadly, Dwayne, I did not predict that he would, kind of disappoint in the box score.
Yeah, the targets part right. Ian. Had the targets right. He dominated in targets today.
Had the targets. Better days will be there for Higgins, but yes, just 6 catches for 60 scoreless yards. Had a couple end zone penalties for those counting, and Jamar Chase almost had his second touchdown, got tackled at the 1-yard line. But yeah, I'm sure we will see bigger and better days for the pair of talented Bengals wide receivers ahead. Over on the Panthers side of the football, Dwayne, look at this, scoring 24 points, looking like a real life NFL offense, life in the post Bryce Young era, I guess. So Andy Dalton went out there, 25 for 40, not perfect, obviously, but 220 yards and a pair of touchdowns, one of each to Deontay Johnson and Xavier Legette. So Deontay still going out there looking a bit banged up. I think it was a play he wasn't even targeted on, fell down, was grabbing his groin. And I was like, great, now we're going to be without Deontay Johnson for weeks. But lo and behold, in vintage Deontay fashion, came back out there and scored a touchdown a few plays later. So ended up with 83 yards and a touchdown. Absolute elite player right now. Dwain getting elite utilization, which we love to see.
Yeah, man. Over the last 2 games with Andy Dalton, who knew? All we needed was Andy Dalton. But I will say we've been on the record of saying, give this man a quarterback, and he is a really good wide receiver. We just didn't know it would be Andy Dalton. So Deontay Johnson, 23.8 fantasy points per game with Andy Dalton under center, 91% route participation, 35% target share. That is freaking amazing. 55% air yard share. Those are wide receiver 1 numbers, guys. Look, it's a 2-game sample, so let's not flip out. But he's going to upgrade again. We said last week, hey, one big performance with Andy Dalton locks him into wide receiver 3 territory. But are we really going to have enough guts to keep pushing him up, maybe into wide receiver 2 territory? I'm going to have to sleep on it, Ian. But I mean, it's certainly a possibility. The one tricky part here, rest of the season, is wondering, okay, if the Panthers are losing, are they eventually going to go back to Bryce Young? And are they going to let him play just to see, okay, did we hit the reset button? Like you said, they put him in timeout. They seriously just say they put him in timeout. I think it really depends on what the season's looking like. But it's not just Deontay Johnson with Andy Dalton, Ian. We have Chuba Hubbard. Yeah. Chuba Hubbard is out here absolutely balling out with Andy Dalton under center, 25 fantasy points per game, 66% of the snaps, 68% of the rushing attempts, 46% route participation. Finally got that participation word right, folks. Did you hear that? 12% target share, averaging 5.6 yards per carry, Ian. So it's going to be really interesting to see what they do with Jonathan Brooks. He's eligible to come back. Are you drinking milk? Or is that just water?
No, it's a gallon of water. I drink one of these
every
Sunday. I just stay hydrated.
I saw the jug. I was like, man, Ian, going to the milk. So look, we'll see what happens with Hubbard. Eventually, we know that the rookie's going to steal some of this work. But man, as long as we know that in games where Jonathan Brooks isn't active, Ian, like Chuba Hubbard's looking really good right now with Andy Dalton. Only final note on the Panther side would be Xavier Legette. Like, he's going to be a guy you guys are going to want to think about on the waiver wire. Adam Thielen was put on the IR ahead of this game, and we saw Legette take on a larger role. He scored 16.6 fantasy points in a PPR format today, 88% route participation, 25% target share, Ian, 30% air yard share, available in 85% of Yahoo leagues. I am prioritizing Dontavian Wicks over him, but I think Legette is a guy that if you don't get Wicks, or you don't want to put the bigger bid on Wicks, that's probably going to take to get him. I think Legette, he's a 1st-round pick, guys. He's a guy that they traded up for at the end of the 1st round. Now, our supermodel didn't love him, but the Panthers liked him, and he's in a spot right now where he could earn this role for the rest of the year, Ian. And it's another one of those things where if the Panthers are losing, they're really going to run Adam Thielen back out there. Like, I mean, I don't know. I think there's a chance that Legette could lock this role down for the rest of the year.
Panthers face the Bears next week, so not going to be as easy as a matchup as maybe they've had over these last couple. But hey, another revenge game for Andy Dalton. Just keep on keeping on. So final point I will make is that Deontay Johnson, for the 2nd straight week, yes, had a big game, but honestly could have been even bigger. He had a fade touchdown right in his hands that got knocked out at the last second. Had another contested catch opportunity for a touchdown in the end zone where he just ultimately couldn't come down with it. And then had a deep ball down the sideline go right off his hands in a more traditional drop. So again, Dwain, really good performance from Deontay, but it wouldn't be a Deontay Johnson performance if we also didn't leave, an extra 40 yards and a touchdown on the table. But at least he is getting the realized yards along the way for now. The Falcons took down the Saints 26-24. I believe it was a 58-yard walk-off by young Wei Koo at the end. That was freaking cool, if you're into kickers and that kind of stuff. But Saints did cover as 2.5-point dogs. The over cashed here at 42.5. So bit of an underwhelming performance, though, from the Falcons, Dwayne. I think if you would have told us before the game, hey, Falcons are going to score 26 points, they're going to have over 300 yards of total offense, we would have assumed we had at least decent days from the main parties involved. But that was not the case, because it sounds like Raheem Morris has taken a page out of the Arthur Smith handbook and wants to keep Tyler Algier involved alongside Bijan Robinson. Both guys were good. Don't get it twisted. Bijan 74 total yards on 11 touches. Tyler Algier 80 total yards on 10 touches, but it was indeed a split situation. So, Dwain, I do think this is an instance where, man, we have to kind of read between the lines again, because we did see Bijan pop up on the injury report this week with that shoulder injury on Thursday, because that's the only thing I can really get to, man, other than just the fact that Tyler Algier, pretty good at football in his own right. But yeah, what do you make of this compared to kind of the Breece Hall, Braylon Allen situation in terms of overall worry level?
I'm not worried. I think it's probably the injury like you're talking about. And we still have we've got an overall sample, right? Even if we include this in. So today we had 41% of the snaps go to Tyler Algier, 62% to Bijan, 53% of the rushing attempts to Algier, and 47% to Bijan. So Algier actually out-touched the guy. I don't think there's a scenario where they're probably giving, Algier more carries, than Bijan Robinson. So I think it probably has something to do with the shoulder. He also took a couple of pretty good hits early in the game. But when you look at this for the season now, okay, including this game, 77% snap share for Bijan and 63% of the rushing attempts, 67% route participation. He's going to be a high-end running back one. I mean, sometimes we just get games like this. So I just don't want to read too much into this Tyler Algier thing, other than we've talked about it, Ian. He is one of those names that gets left out there on the waiver wire. And if something did happen to Bijan Robinson, we actually have seen this guy put up running back one performances before. And we also, I think, are both of the mind that this Falcons offense is going to continue to gel. It's going to get better. I don't think it's going to continue to be, I don't know that it'll get to being an elite offense, but I think it's going to be an average to above average offense at a minimum. And there's a chance that it could still turn into a good offense because they have good players and Kirk Cousins is still getting the hang of the offense. He's still recovering. So I think Bijan's going to be completely fine. For some reason, the manager in your league's panicking about Bijan right now and this performance, then, I would be trying to buy.
Not the most magnificent start, but guys, again, it's just really based on those expectations that you have for anyone you take in the first round, similar to last season when Bijan didn't exactly finish as this RB40 out there, was still a rock solid upside RB2 at worst. Again, just sucks. I get it when you use that high round pick on the guy. Better days should rest ahead, hopefully on Thursday night against the Buccaneers. That said, Dwain, the real, the opposite of a star here was Kyle Pitts. Had as many catches as you today, Dwain. That's right, a big old 0. Raheem Morris not worried, noting that stats are for losers. And I get his point. All the coach and the team cares about is winning. But you know what? It's easy to say stats are for losers until it comes time to get that handy dandy contract extension. And the front office throws those same stats right back in your face and says, this is why we're not going to pay you more money. So, man, Dwain, goose egg. Look, we've seen Kyle Pitts. I don't think he's a bad football player. He certainly, in a couple years, though, hasn't exactly looked like the generational unicorn number 4 overall pick that he was lauded as. So at this point, man, Drake London, Darnell Mooney, even Ray freaking McLeod being consistently used ahead of Kyle Pitts. Hey, we've seen the position, the injuries, how freaking weak it is. I'm not saying Kyle Pitts is someone that we're now going to rank as a tight end 20, but just last straw for you, Dwain, generally in terms of ranking him as this top 5, top 6 option at the position.
Yeah, the problem is, like, when you start looking at the names you're going to push him below, you're like, well, I don't know if I can. But we talk about on this show looking at the profiles compared historically to tight end scoring. And what I'm going to say about Kyle Pitts' profile right now, if you want to look at it that way, instead of just in a vacuum of, everyone else at tight end sucks this year, so we got to still rank him 6. If we look at him through that other lens, it's not good. He looks like a low-end tight end 1, barely clinging on right now. And the only thing that's keeping him there is his 80% route participation, because that always keeps you in the mix to be a low-end tight end 1. The problem here, Ian, is he was really good as a target earner in his first season, right? Second season was cut short. It was good for that short little period, not quite as good as year 1. Then we gave him an excuse last year. We said, okay, coming back, playing hurt, doing some things, got a little better towards the end of the year, but it wasn't where we wanted it to be. And now we're looking at this season. He's 13%, man. Drake London's at a 27% target share. You mentioned it. Darnell Mooney also ahead of him with a 21% target share. And as you also mentioned, Ray freaking McLeod at a 20% target share. So I think it's a challenge. The other thing that's happening here with Kyle Pitts is we've got an offense that wants to run 3 wide receivers a lot more. So Ray McLeod is now challenging him for those targets that really were undisputedly his before. And you didn't have a wide receiver 2 as good as Darnell Mooney. Not that we think Darnell Mooney's a superstar, but he's better than he's better than Kaderil Hodge. right?
Hey.
Or Hodges. I don't
Yeah,
even remember.
He is.
Yeah. So Van Jefferson was a guy they ran out there last year. So there's just more target competition. And the only guy really proving that they can still earn targets in this offense is Drake London. Kyle Pitts, unfortunately, is not. So, yes, I look at him as a low-end tight end one. He's going to grade higher than that because, again, the position is so bad this year, but it's not ideal.
He's looking like, fancy Colby Parkinson at this point, Dwayne, which is not a phrase I ever thought was going to come out of my mouth talking about
Jared
Kyle
Cooks
Pitts.
is like the name that comes to my mind, the very athletic prospect for all those years and occasionally would give you, a spike season. I'm worried that that's the direction that we're headed in with Kyle Pitts at this point in his career.
Like, would you rather start Kyle Pitts on Thursday night against the Bucks or Cole Kmet against the Panthers? You hesitated. That's all I need to know.
I know. That's
all right,
guys. That's sad.
That's all you need to know. Let's move on. Talk about something a little more positive. No, wait, it's the Saints. Derek Carr, 239 yards, 0 touchdowns, 1 INT. I believe it was a later one. Regardless, Dwayne, not exactly looking like, the second coming of the greatest show on turf after an electric first 2 weeks of the season. That said, we all understand the O-line injuries that have taken on this team. And honestly, not even just that. Alvin Kamara, Chris Olave obviously playing through some pain as well. Taysom Hill was healthy enough to go out there and vulture 2 touchdowns away from us, but then he ended up getting injured, suffered an abdomen injury later in the game. So looking at the Saints, Dwayne, again, Derek Carr certainly crashing back to earth and maybe someone that we got a little excited about. Again, can't predict all the injuries, but regardless, kind of huddled around next to Kirk Cousins and Aaron Rodgers, I believe, in the ranks the rest of the way. The bigger question is how excited can we be, I think, about these wide receivers, because Alvin Kamara continuing to get A+ utilization, found the end zone at the end of the game. You're thrilled if you have that man, but man, Chris Olave, 8 catches, 87 scoreless yards on 10 targets, got tackled down at the 1-yard line, banged up there towards the end, but came back in, clearly just playing through a couple issues. And Rashid Shaheed, 11 targets, 8 catches, 83 yards, almost making fantasy managers forget about that goose egg from last week. So Chris Olave versus Rashid Shaheed, Dwayne. I know we've had Olave really as the low-end wide receiver 1, Shaheed climbing up the ranks as that boom or bust wide receiver 3. At what point do we kind of cut it in the middle and make both these guys lower-end wide receiver 2s?
At the point whenever we want Chris Olave to go off, like that's when we'll do it.
And then he'll go off.
Then he'll go off. Look, they're both playing good. The challenge with this offense, so right now, Rashid Shaheed's sitting at a 26% target share for the season. Chris Olave's at 25%. The problem is this is a run-balanced offense. They want to run the ball, and then they want to run the ball some more, and then they want to run the ball some more. When you usually see a 25%, 26% target share, you're thinking, oh, man, that's 7 to 9 targets per game. Right now, for Shaheed, it's 6. And it's 6 also for Olave. It's 6.25 for Shaheed because they run the ball so much. So really, you need efficiency. These guys have to hit the big plays when they get the targets. I mean, the catchable targets, all those things are good. Like, they're still really in good sync with Derek Carr. And Derek Carr played better today than he did last week, even though they have 2 of their starting offensive linemen out. So I think it's more to do with that. You need to come through with the big plays in order for these guys to really be valuable. But I do have to say with Rashid Shaheed, to your point, Ian, like looking at these target shares, man, 22%, 27%, 26%, 31%. Air yard share, 47%, 46%, 51%, 52%. He's a baller. I mean, so I think when you look at these 2 guys, they are very close together. I still think that they're both capable of giving you a wide receiver 1 spike week. They're also both capable of being a low-end wide receiver 3 on any given week. So I was kind of joking around at first saying, well, as soon as you move Chris Olave down, like the other one's going to explode, he's going to explode. And that might be the case. But overall, I do think they should be closer to each other in the ranks.
It's more Shaheed rising than Olave dropping. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, I think we do have to manage our expectations a little bit just because they're so run heavy. Yeah. You have to think of it in different terms, right? You can't even think of it as just, okay, they play for the Saints. No, you need to think of it as, how would you feel if Chris Olave had a 25% target share and he played, this is going to be too dramatic, but he played for the Steelers, right? It's not that bad because we've got a passer that we think is overall still better than Justin Fields. But at the same time, like, they're running the ball a ton, man. Yeah. It's almost like an old Mike Vrabel offense. Okay, let's get rid of the scrambling quarterback, a true pocket passer, but we know they want to run the ball. They're almost in that bucket right now of how staunch they are in wanting to attack via the run.
Again, mentioned Olave got tackled at the 1 yard line. That was the second time that's happened to him this year. Certainly would have looked a lot cooler in the box score if he had gotten there. Also had Derek Carr get stuffed at the 1 twice, tried to do that old school Drew Brees jump, push the ball right over the goal line, and just did not look nearly as athletic as Drew Brees used to be when he made that happen. Again, still put the Saints in a position to win the game, but we had those late game heroics, which are thanks in large part to Darnell Mooney drawing a long defensive pass interference. Honestly, Dwayne, he did get open there at the end, had a chance for a chunk score. Sadly, Kirk Cousins could not put it on him. So Mooney's playing well.
Saints outplayed the Falcons. The Falcons, they got the muffed punt off of Rashid Shaheed's shoulder when he was trying to fill it inside the 3.
Yeah.
They were able to grab that. That was huge. And then they had a scoop and score by Troy Anderson, their linebacker. Like I get it. We can't take those plays away. Those are mistakes that cost the Saints the game, though. Overall, they outplayed the Falcons. They were the better all-around team today. Those 2 plays killed them.
Final note, I did not get actual eyes on the hold, but yeah, Bijan Robinson did take a screen 19 yards to the house until it got nullified.
Yes,
so make sure you guys check out the Week 4 Sheesh Report for a full breakdown on that one. So plenty of games to still get to, guys. But first, a quick word to our friends over at DraftKings. A chill in the air, leaves falling to the ground, and football every weekend. That is what fall is all about. And you can make each weekend even more exciting by getting into the action with our partners at DraftKings, the #1 place to bet on touchdowns. And right now, all new customers who bet $5 will instantly get $200 in bonus bets. All you got to do is download the DraftKings Sportsbook app and sign up using our promo code FantasyLife. The crown is yours. Again, that is $200 in bonus bets instantly. And you can stay in on the action. Use your $200 in bonus bets to bet anytime touchdowns on DraftKings. After all, DraftKings is the place to bet touchdowns. Sports betting is not yet available in your state. Don't worry. You can still join in on all the fun with DraftKings Daily Fantasy and have the shot to win cash prizes. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now. Again, new customers use our promo code FantasyLife and bet just $5 on any wager to get $200 in bonus bets instantly. That's promo code FantasyLife only at DraftKings Sportsbook. The Bears took down the Rams 24-18. Chi-Town covering as 3-point favorites. The over even cashed here at a lowly 40.5. So didn't quite get, another breakout. I don't even want to call week 3 a breakout Caleb performance, but wasn't a big one in the box score. Just 17 for 23, 157 yards and 1 touchdown through the air. Did go to DJ Moore. Cool to see him get on the stat sheet, but Dwayne, not a good day for Keenan Allen. Just 3 catches, 19 yards, or Roma Dunze with 10 scoreless yards on 1 single catch. So both DJ and Adunze could have had additional scores on the day. That said, I don't really want to blame either on Caleb that much because we did see DJ Moore.
Sam Darnold makes both of those throws. That out and up to Odunze, plenty of room.
You got
back into the end zone, and then DJ Moore up the same sideline the next play.
Run DJ.
Yeah, well, man, I'm sorry. I think Caleb, man. Like I know he's going to get better, but he looks pretty bad to me right now. Like when I look at his box scores, honestly, I'm like, man, how did he even get to that? But just watching him, like nothing's in rhythm. He can't just hit his back foot and throw it. He's got he's scrambling around. His eyes are going everywhere. It's a mess right now. I don't know if it's Shane Waldron. I don't know if it's Caleb Williams. It's probably some combination of those guys. But yeah, he could have at least hit one of those freaking touchdown passes. I mean, his accuracy is definitely not pinpoint. It's just general okay accuracy.
Certainly would have been a lot cooler if he did, Dwayne. I will give you that one. So either way, it was not pretty for Chicago Bears passing attack. That said, Dwayne, finally saw a lot of good things out of a certain Bears running back. DeAndre Swift, after all those reports, talk about what went right for, I guess, Dwayne, the undisputed Bears RB1.
Yeah, so I'll hit Roshan real quick, after we were told that, he was going to suddenly get a lot of run this weekend. He didn't. He had the same role he did last week, 33% of snaps, 27% of the rushing attempts, 23% route participation. So still the number 2 back on the Bears. So he's the guy you're going to handcuff. And we know DeAndre Swift, he hasn't exactly been great, but he was really good this weekend, Ian. And so, maybe DeAndre just needed a nice Swift kick in the ass. If you want a good dad joke for your afternoon, but he came through with 29.5 fantasy points, 67% snap share, 62% attempts. Those things aren't like, that's where he's been. He just hasn't done anything with those opportunities. So really, like the only difference here is he scored the fantasy points. He did have 62% route participation, but again, that's something that's been there. The big thing today, Ian, that I don't see lasting, but he has been good in this category, like over the years, a 32% target share. Like that's insanity. Like you're not going to get that many. I mean, that's where a ton of Caleb Williams' completions came from today, or to this man, little dump offs. So I think the truth is somewhere in the middle. DeAndre Swift was not as bad as what we thought over the first few games, just based on his utilization alone. But we know he's not going to get that many targets when you've got Keenan Allen, DJ Moore, Rome Odunze, Cole Kmet. They're all higher priorities in the passing attack on most weeks. But you do know that DeAndre Swift can come through in that way occasionally. So I don't know what your thoughts are. It's still really tough to trust him enough to even upgrade him to running back 2 territory, even with this really strong utilization, just because I don't trust the Bears, man. I don't trust the Bears offense.
Just a good reminder, I think, buck 60 plus on the ground and a touchdown. Look good out there. Hey, guess what, though? Running backs can't pick up those yards if the offensive line doesn't improve just a little bit. So the big uglies up front deserve some help as well. So we're getting the bye weeks, Dwayne, where I think it'll be easier to potentially get Swift in that top 24. But, we also have 3 weeks of evidence telling us that we probably shouldn't get too carried away here.
Yeah. I just think that's the thing for now. Like, look, we'll take it as a positive. You at least know that, okay, great. It's not just an empty utilization score. He actually does have an opportunity to score these fantasy points. And again, truth will probably be somewhere in the middle. Hopefully, though, like we'll be in a few weeks from now, like, okay, look, DeAndre Swift's he's in the running back 2 conversation. I mean, that's what we hope.
Didn't have a Swift getting more receiving yards than DJ Moore, Keenan Allen, and Rome Odunze, combined on my bingo card, Dwayne. But hey, life comes at you fast sometimes. Bit of an underwhelming performance from Cole Kmet, and that's what happens when Caleb isn't dropping back 60 times to throw. Just 3 catches for 34 scoreless yards. That said, Dwayne did not see Gerald Everett on the box score. So can we still trust Kmet at least as a full-time tight end in the Shane Waldron offense?
This week was his highest route participation. So he's been in an upward trend since week 1. He was at 77%. Gerald Everett was at 15%.
Okay, man. I guess visors and cool numbers aren't everything in the year 2024, Dwayne. A man can dream. Think that is pretty much it on the Bears side of the football. Over with the Rams, again, just 18 points, continuing to be down shorthanded without Cooper Kupp and Puka Nacua. I believe Jay Glazer also said before the game that both of them, once again, looking unlikely for week 5 as well. So definitely, Puka, but I believe he said even Cooper Kupp going to be a few extra weeks. So once again, Dwayne, just really the Kyren Williams show in Los Angeles.
Yeah, nothing to really add, on the running backs. Look, Kyren Williams is Kyren Williams. He got all the touches, all the snaps, all the everything. You guys are used to hearing about it by now. And it was Ronnie Rivers, not Blake Corum, as his backup. So that continues on. The big thing here with the Rams, I think, as far as takeaways go, Ian, knowing that we're probably going to be without Puka Nacua and Cooper Kupp another week, Jordan Whittington, we did actually get the role that we thought he might get last weekend. He had a 97% route participation. He had a 28% target share. So he is someone that I think that we're going to be able to get into lineups in larger leagues next weekend. It really will come down again. Like, are you guys playing in a 12-team league that starts 3 wide receivers and 2 flex? Those are the kind of leagues I'm talking about. In a PPR, not in a standard. You're probably going to be able to go get Jordan Whittington for a lot cheaper than some of these other names that we're going to be talking about at wide receiver, including Dontavian Wicks that we already talked about. You're going to want those guys over Whittington, but this is your backup bid. If for some reason you can't get them and you've got to have someone for next weekend, probably get Whittington pretty cheap. He's still available in most leagues. The other guy here, Ian, is Tutu Atwell. He's a guy that I really liked today, just, in the particular matchup. But with Atwell, he had a 21% target share and a 91% route participation. And he's just one of these guys, they keep in motion all the time. I don't have the motion numbers yet. PFF sends those to us the following day. But last week, 50% of his routes were in motion. All the plays I saw him today, except for like 2, he was in motion again. So it's really tough to try to, add coverage to stop Tutu Atwell. And he is their big play threat. This is the guy that can get you for 70 yards at any moment. So I really love him, like in these underdog teasems and where these underdog lines where and pick them and you can actually tease it up, to a higher number. I really love. I used him today. I hit on him today, and I hit on Rashid Shaheed today. So they were really good to me because they start off lower. Like you're usually getting them like 39 yards, right? Or something like that. You can tease it up into a reasonable range, like 60, 70, and you get like a 3x multiplier on it. So when you look at Tutu Atwell, he's definitely locked into being one of the top 2 options right now in this passing attack.
Certainly a nice cheat code to help get those, 160-pound wide receivers a bit less concerned with press coverage, get them running full speed at the snap. Sean McVay continuing to do good stuff on the offensive side of the football. So it was Tyler Johnson as odd man out, Dwain, just Robinson, Whittington, and Tutu full-timers now.
Yep. Tyler Johnson, 13% route participation. Demarcus Robinson, 88%, but just kind of his normal self, not earning targets.
I saw Tom Brady dapping up Mike Evans and some of the Buccaneers guys. I would love if when Tom Brady does actually, call a game with the Rams, if he just flips off Tyler Johnson, right away. Because let's face it, if there's one quarterback that's hated a wide receiver over the years, it would be that one. So that's enough from that game, though. We had the Colts take down the Steelers now 27-24. Indy covered as 2.5-point dogs, obviously with the W, and the over did cash at 40.5. So unfortunately had an Anthony Richardson injury early on in this one, which is a shame, Dwain, because he made 2 or 3 of the better throws, I think, that he has had go the entire season. So being called a hip issue, did not slide as we have seen, and then comes back in the game briefly and did slide, only to take a helmet-to-helmet hit from Minkah Fitzpatrick. Not blaming Minkah. It did seem like Richardson slid late, but man, this guy just cannot get away from some of these big hits out there. So doesn't sound overly serious, Dwain. We did get a report from Colts beat reporter Cameron Wolf saying that Richardson is expecting to miss, quote, very little or no game action. But man, in that 3 or so quarters without Richardson, we did see what these wide receivers are capable of with Joe Flacco under center.
Yeah, for sure. And with Richardson, I was watching the play when it happened. It didn't even look like he was trying to slide. It looked like he just realized he was not going to be able to run or juke or do anything. And he just kind of started to go down, and then he took that late hit. So I'll be really interested to see with Richardson. My gut says I'm not a doctor, but my gut says he's going to miss time. I wonder if it's some sort of a sports hernia or something, just like in the area that he was reaching. So we'll see what happens. Those things can absolutely, take some time. But yeah, with Joe Flacco on the field, the target shares today, Ian, from the time he took over, 33% to Josh Downs. Josh Downs is a guy that we like a lot. We know that he's a good football player. 22% of the air yards. He scored 20.1 fantasy points from the time that Mr. Flacco entered the game. Michael Pittman, 9.3 fantasy points with a 25% target share, but he was already having a good game before. He was really the guy that Anthony Richardson had already hit down the field, and he had a couple of, I can't remember if he had 1 or 2 catches from Richardson, but Michael Pittman definitely had his best day of the season, got over 100 yards. Alec Pierce, odd man out today, only 1.9 fantasy points, 8% of the targets. He was still on the field, like from a route participation standpoint. He was the guy that was out there. But man, yeah, I think Downs and Pittman, those are the 2 guys. We saw what Joe Flacco did last year. And we're not saying like he's a superhero, but he did supercharge Amari Cooper and David Njoku down the stretch. Like that happened, guys. Like those guys became absolute monsters in fantasy with Joe Flacco under center. And even if you don't want to look at it as Flacco being like this, really great player, just from what we've seen so far from Anthony Richardson this season, even if he's like a 60% passer, it's going to be a massive upgrade over Anthony Richardson. If he's a 65% passer, like I don't know what's bigger than massive, but it's going to be bigger than that. So you're also going to probably get a little bit of a bump from Jonathan Taylor because you're going to get a little bit of, less of the rushing attempts and things like that stolen. You're going to have the big part for Taylor is you could get more checkdowns. Now we'll have to see what's up with Jonathan Taylor's ankle because he did leave the game with an ankle, and we had Trey Sermon enter the contest.
Got a lot of Trey Sermon late. Didn't do much with the 5 carries, just 8 yards. But Dwain, the one thing with Sermon, something we've talked about, as much as he does seem like the handcuff to Jonathan Taylor, wouldn't expect the same role because likely would see a lot of Tyler Goodson in that pass down role.
Yeah, I don't know if we will or not. Like today, I think that's TBD. And the only reason I say I think that's TBD is they've actually shown us they're willing to use Trey Sermon on passing downs. Remember just like 2 weeks ago when everybody freaked out because Trey Sermon was getting all the passing down work. So I think it'll be interesting to see what happens between him and Tyler Goodson. I would say we don't know for sure. It could be Trey Sermon getting most of the role. Obviously, we wouldn't expect the same fantasy points because he's not Jonathan Taylor, but he might get 90% of that role. I really think it's a legit question mark. It could also go the way you're talking, where Trey Sermon gets, 50, 55% of the work, and then you get 35%, 40% going to, Goodson. I think we'll just have to wait and see. Probably project it somewhere between those 2 things for next week if we were without Jonathan Taylor, which hopefully we're not.
Was a nice game for JT. Before that injury, 24 touches and racked up 108 total yards and a touchdown to his credit. Another really big game we saw out there, Dwain, came from Steelers QB1, apparently for the future per Ian Rappaport, despite Russell Wilson, getting back near full health at this point. But yeah, man, Justin Fields, 312 yards and a touchdown through the air, also added 55 yards and another 2 scores on the ground. Finally, Dwain, the sort of, high-end fantasy performance that we knew Fields was capable of, but just hadn't seen so far in the year 2024.
Yeah, 32 fantasy points today from Justin Fields. He's a guy I know that you and I both talked about last week. We both wrote about him, and it really just came down to like what the guy is doing, from a scrambling perspective and getting involved in the design run game. Those things happened again. He had 10 total carries today, Ian, 4 scrambles, 6 design rushes, 39%. He had 39 yards in the design run game today. So yeah, I mean, he's just involved, and then he had the big passing game on top of it. We talked about that too. We're like, look, guys, he's not a great passer, but he's gonna give you a spike passing game. It's gonna come. It's eventually gonna happen. And why not? It's the Colts. I mean, are the Colts now like challenging like Washington for like being like the best matchup in fantasy?
Washington looked good today, Dwain.
Yeah, they look good today. Kyler did not look good. I know we'll get to that game here in a minute. But yeah, just looking at the Colts, man, that's just a juicy matchup all the way around. And Justin Fields definitely took advantage of it today. But again, it just goes back to history, guys. When you have someone who's involved on the ground, is what Justin Fields is, it's almost impossible for them to not be a top 10 quarterback. The probabilities are so high that they're going to be, and then they're going to give you these sort of spike games. So if you had Justin Fields, you got him in your lineup today. Congrats.
Going up against the Cowboys on Sunday Night Football next week. Certainly a defense that we haven't seen, be world renowned against the run, other than when they're playing the Giants on Thursday night, of course. So
probably no Micah Parsons. They will not have DeMarcus Lawrence.
Jeez. All right. Well, Justin Fields, I know he was a QB1 this week in the FantasyLife rankings. Strap in, buddy. You're going to be there next week as well. Other point here, Dwain, it was a good game from George Pickens, 7 catches, 113 scoreless yards. Now, we know he's capable of that, but we also know probably not going to see too many games where Fields is throwing the ball 34 times.
Yeah, I mean, 16 fantasy points a day from Pickens. But again, you and I have talked about this one so many times. We know that George Pickens, he's a dog. He's on the verge of being an alpha. Like alpha, is like the elite. Like Nico Collins today said, "I'm just an absolute alpha." Pickens, could you imagine where would you rank George Pickens, Ian, if like he was getting
first?
To play with, no. Yeah, the one we always go to. What if he got to play with Josh Allen, or Patrick Mahomes? Like, even if you took a step down from those, like just an above average passer. And I'm sorry, I'm not trying to be hateful to Justin Fields. Like, he had a good game today. Maybe he could prove like that he can do that more often in the future, but he's not done it. Like, Pickens is a guy that he might be in the wide receiver 1 conversation on the right team. He had a 34% target share today. The only thing holding him back, he has a team that wants to just grind out close wins. They want to run the ball all the time. Today they got down, and it forced the Steelers to have to throw the ball. And so in that game script, it worked out well for Pickens. But that's not the way the Steelers want to play football.
Again, we can get some booms. We got something close to one today, but yeah, unfortunately, not going to have as much volume as George Pickens fantasy managers.
Freiermuth boomed too for the same reasons. 83% route participation. He had a 22% target share, so he gave you 16.7 fantasy points. Actually, outscored George Pickens, believe it or not, Mr. Pat Freiermuth. But everything we just said about Pickens goes for Freiermuth, except he's not as good of a player. It's just the game script worked out perfectly today.
I will say, I know we give Arthur Smith a little bit of crap from time to time about playing the backups, but man, whenever they throw the ball at Darnell Washington, Dwain, good things happen. Had a ridiculous play today, stiff-armed a player to the ground, and then hurdled another man. I still don't know why Darnell Washington doesn't put his hand in the ground full-time and make a lot more money as an offensive tackle, but man, that dude is truly an athletic marvel. Also, game 1 without Jalen Warren, currently tending to that knee injury, and our one true king, Cordero Patterson, unfortunately got knocked out of this one in the first half. Looked great before he did, Dwain.
Yes,
62 yards. I would not be surprised if Kyle Brandt's featuring him as an angry runner with some of the stuff he was putting on tape out there. Once we did see CPAT out of the picture, though, Dwain, truly looked like it was Najee Harris' workhorse RB1 season.
Yeah, I mean, Najee had 69% of the snaps today, 43% of the rushing attempts. But again, remember, we're talking about a team where the quarterback is really getting involved as well in the design run game. And they didn't get to run the ball as much today because they were trailing. Already talked about the 6 carries that we had from Justin Fields in the design run game. So 13 today for Najee Harris. You look at Cordarrelle Patterson, to your point, like it was really more of a split in the first half. And Cordarrelle Patterson looked like the better of the two players. Now, Najee, I know that he ended up, being a guy that they said, oh, it's not going to be an issue. But, he got hurt last week. And he had an issue with his arm. It was in a sling earlier this week. So we don't know. That might have been an issue. The big thing for Najee today, Ian, was really his involvement in the passing game. He caught a sweet pass that he just ran over a few dudes. Najee's still a big guy, and it's not easy for DBs to get this man on the ground. But he had a 19% target share today. And so that was really big. With Jaylen Warren out, we're looking at Najee probably being in more of a 14 to 15% target share player until Jaylen Warren returns, especially if we don't have Cordarrelle Patterson either.
I'm trying to think who's even their next RB up on the depth chart at this point, man. Again, not a guarantee that CPAT's going to be out of the picture, but Aaron Shampklin.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. There was an Aaron Shampklin. Is that a fullback maybe? I don't even know if that's a running back.
Well, he's RB2 in Pittsburgh now. When you're RB2 for Arthur Smith, maybe just maybe that leads to more touches than we expected. Moving on, we had the Buccaneers take down the Philadelphia Eagles, as they are known to do recently, 33-16. Tampa closed as 1-point underdogs. The over did cash here at 42.5. So Eagles will have a week 5 bye to get right. But as we know, the winners write the history books. Let's kick things off with another great performance from Baker Mayfield. Dwain, 347 yards, 2 touchdowns. I mean, at what point do we start kind of looking at him and saying, man, this dude is playing a lot like a borderline QB1? Because the numbers so far through a month of action tell us that he's been even more than that.
Yeah, now a lot of it does come down to the touchdowns, but today he had the yards. I mean, 347 yards. Ooh. I mean, and this is what we were thinking last week with Derek Carr and the Saints and how they would attack the Eagles instead of trying to attack them on the run in the run game with all those big bodies up front. Baker today, they didn't care. They're just like, we're going to draw back and we're going to sling it. We've got Mike Evans. We've got Chris Godwin. You guys have who back there in the secondary? No one that can cover them. We didn't have Jalen McMillan today, and then Trey Palmer caught a touchdown. Then he had a concussion, so he left the game. So it was a big day, obviously, for Mike Evans. But yeah, Baker Mayfield, 347 yards, 2 passing touchdowns. I think at a minimum, what we have to say, Ian, is like when he gets these matchups against these sort of secondaries, we know that they're going to be willing to dial up the passing game, and we've seen it multiple times now this season. So yeah, I mean, Baker, if you've got him, I don't know that you can say that he's a must start, because as soon as you do, man, I'm just telling you, he's going to dud right in your face. But he's got the weapon, so I would say he's a borderline QB1, and in the right matchups, you're getting him into the QB1 conversation.
Falcons coming up on Thursday night. Also chipped in a rushing touchdown. Dwain, if I have, an extra half hour on my hands this week, I might have to make Baker a rushing, highlight phone, because he has been having several pretty great runs so far this season. Sneaky fast, deceptively fast, real gym rat there playing QB for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers.
That grit.
Got grit. Very gritty guy. Probably the, son of a former coach. All right. The wide receivers obviously had a big game when Baker did. Big Mike, 94 yards and a touchdown. Chris Godwin, 69 yards. Even Sterling Shepard had himself a mostly good game, although he did drop what should have been another touchdown for Baker. So really, Dwain, the fantasy relevant news comes down to this backfield slowly but surely starting to turn to Bucky Irving's favor.
Yeah, and so we heard last week that they wanted to get Bucky Irving more involved in that game, but the way the game script went, that is what kept Rachaad White on the field. So this week, we actually saw a game where they were leading, and it did look more like it's not completely the Bucky Irving show, but from a rushing percentage standpoint, it was even between the two guys. What's up, Eason? 42% of the team rushing attempts to Bucky Irving, same number to Rachaad White. White still led, in snaps, as we would expect, 60% versus 41% for Bucky Irving. And most of that comes down to the passing down work. But that was closer too, Ian, 46% route participation for Rachaad White, 38% for Bucky Irving. So really getting closer to that even split. And if Rachaad White continues to struggle, he was better today, 4.9 yards per carry. So like he might have been just running like, his life depended on it. I don't know. He had one big carry early in the game. So I didn't get necessarily see the rest of those carries. So I don't know if it was just all really due to that.
No, he only, just for the record, his long run was only 17 yards. So he did look better out there today.
Yeah. So the 17-yarder was pretty much like right out of the gate. He had 10 carries. So yeah, looking at Bucky Irving, his long of the day was 15, yards. So, I mean, they were really similar, but the point here being is like the trend. We've got the right trend going for Bucky Irving. We talked about it last week. I said, look, running back 4 territory, once bye weeks get here, he'll be the running back 3 conversation, which bye weeks are starting this week. But we can't get him in the running back 2 or anything like that yet. But again, guys, it's about long term. Where could Bucky Irving end up? There's still a path where he ends up leading this team. Just realize it could stall out here, right? This could be the world we're living in, where it's a split backfield between these two guys. They may think that they have really good complementary aspects to their game. But if something does happen with Rachaad White, with as well as the Buccaneers are playing in and all these points they're scoring, man, Bucky Irving is a guy that, I know it sounds weird to say, but like we could look up and be like, wow, like, is he a running back 1? Like that could happen.
I think that's a very reasonable ceiling scenario if White leaves the picture. But I know I've been asked a lot this week, Dwayne, do we see a scenario where Bucky just straight up yanks his job and is having the 70-80% snap rate on his own? I don't see that happening.
Oh, I think it's very much in the realm of possibility. Everything's like arranged though. Like, I mean, that's what I'm saying. Like, are we saying we're 100% sure that that's not going to happen? I don't think we can say that. Do we think it's 100% sure it's going to happen? I don't think we can say that. I mean, it's probably somewhere in the middle of those two things, but I think that Bucky Irving definitely has outs, and it doesn't have to be a deal where he completely takes the whole backfield over. I mean, it could be he gets to 60% of the rushing attempts and, he gets to half of the passing downs. That could be enough in this offense to be a guy that you're starting every single week in fantasy. Like, is that going to win your league? Probably not unless like he's hyper efficient and gets really lucky and scores a lot of touchdowns. But you know how it goes. Like, what if he just starts getting all the carries inside the 5 and he's getting 60% of the rushing? Like, that could be enough. So do I see him straight up getting to a 70% snap share? Probably not. I don't want to say it's impossible, but most running backs don't get that. Like, that's very rare anyway. Like, there's only usually each year 70% snap share, like 2 or 3 guys. So that's a really high bar.
I guess if you want to base it on reason and rational thinking, you have a few good points there, Dwayne. So regardless, good stuff from the now 3-1 Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Certainly looking like one of the better offenses in the NFL through 4 weeks of action. On the other side of the football, Dwayne mentioned the Eagles do have a week 5 bye to get right, and I hope they do. Certainly, playing at far less than full health. No Devonta Smith, no A.J. Brown. But man, at this point, it's Saquon Barkley, it's Dallas Goedert, and it's everyone else, unless they get to the 1-yard line, and then Jalen Hurts can get pushed into the end zone.
Yeah, nothing to really add here other than like it's like the ghost of bust wide receivers that we all had hopes for. Jahan Dotson running around out there today without Devonta Smith or AJ Brown. He mustered a 14% target share. Come on, Jahan Dotson. That's all you can do. Paris Campbell matched him. Ian, 14%. Sorry, don't want to want to shoot the arrow too close to the heart there with your Ohio State guy. And then John Ross. John Ross had a 7% target share. We got all these former round 1 and round 2 picks, not able to get much done. Dallas Goedert, 28% target share. Didn't come through with very many fantasy points. 13.2. You'll take that at a tight end and PPR. So I shouldn't say that. That feels like 1,000 points this year. But Dallas Goedert, I think the one thing we've learned is that he's still a really good tight end. Oh, yeah. He just plays with 2 really good wide receivers. And, he's probably going to go back to being somebody that's a borderline tight end 1 once we have A.J. Brown and Devonta Smith back in the picture.
I actually did know John Ross was on the Eagles, Dwayne, but when they threw him a downfield target, I was like, man, this is how down bad the Eagles are. They're targeting wide receivers with number 38 right now on the field.
Is that his number? I didn't.
Yeah, what a dick move by the equipment manager, man. Like, that's how you're down bad as a John Ross truther. So, again, was still good for Goddard, 7 catches, 62 yards, and Saquon, who cleared 100 total yards again, just couldn't quite get that again short touchdown. He got stuffed at the 1-yard line, and then I believe the 2-yard line on the same drive. They actually gave him another chance from the 1. They didn't stop tush pushing, but again, just couldn't quite get into the end zone from Saquon. So there was also a weird play, Dwayne. I'll check the all 22 tomorrow, but opening play of the game, Saquon was pretty wide open downfield, it seemed like, and then Jalen kind of chucked the ball out of bounds. So did you get eyes on this one though, Dwayne? Because do you hear what I'm saying now about how Jalen Hurts looks like he runs a 5.5 40? What happened to this dude's athleticism?
I don't know, man. Like I did see some of it. I didn't get to watch a lot of the game. I mostly watched the Red Zone channel today with Mr. Scott Hansen. But we didn't have the Eagles really doing that much with the football. I saw a lot of the Bucks. The Bucks were on the TV a lot. The Eagles were not as much until later in the game. So no, I don't have a lot to comment on the athleticism of Jalen Hurts, but I'll try to watch the film this week, Ian, just so you can pitch me that question one more time next weekend.
Thank you. Otherwise, I will keep bringing it up, Dwayne. So before we move on to the next game, though, Dwayne, do you want to guess what happened on the Ravens' first play from scrimmage?
I don't know. Mark Andrews was blocking. I don't know what happened.
Threw a great block, which allowed Derrick Henry to go 87 yards to the house. What a moment for, the Ravens. And just goes to show that Buffalo fans, as soon as you start feeling good about yourselves, Derrick Henry or something else bad is here to happen. So just early in the
87 yards
to the house. What a play by
Glad I took the under on Derrick Henry's 70 yards.
Oh, no. Did you really?
Yeah.
Hey, at least it's
a hot start. Hey, at least it's over. It's over. You don't even have to worry about it.
Now what's going to happen too is he's going to finish with like 90 total yards. The process. The Texans took down the Jaguars 24-20. Jacksonville covered though as 5.5-point dogs. The under cashed just by a thread at 44.5. So was looking like scary hours, Dwayne, with the Texans potentially dropping this one to their AFC South rival. But CJ Stroud wound up hooking up with Dari Ogunbowale. Revenge game season for the game-winning score. So 345 yards and a pair of touchdowns through the air for CJ Stroud. Not exactly unexpected, but man, Dwayne, what has to be at least a little bit surprising, even for the biggest truthers out there, is Nico Collins, man, starting to make a claim for the wide receiver one. He's up there right now.
Yeah, man, looking like an absolute beast. 39% target share. Didn't have Tank Dell on the field, obviously, today, but still, I mean, that's just nuts, Ian. 98% route participation, so hardly ever leaving the field. Yeah, I mean, 46% air yard share. So the dude looks like an absolute beast right now. High-end wide receiver one. Stephon Diggs also was really good today. Not that good. 23% target share for him. He was out there for 87% of the routes. He gave you 18.5 fantasy points. So not the 33 that you got from Nico today, but 18.5. You'll still take that from Stephon Diggs. So we talked about him this past week. In games without Tank Dell, man, we're probably talking about a guy that's more like a high-end wide receiver 2, mid-range wide receiver 2 than the wide receiver 3 that we would be calling him in the games when you have Tank Dell active.
Looks good athletically out there as well. I mean, he ran in for a touchdown on a play. Touchdown, it looked like it was a trick play. Ended up, just going off script and scoring. Yeah, it was sweet. And then he had a little drag as well where he managed to reverse field a little bit and pick up some extra yards. I think it got called back. Freaking zebras all day, man. They want to throw their flags out there. But yeah, so no Tank Dell in this one obviously made life easier. Did we see a rotation at the wide receiver 3 spot, Dwayne?
Yeah, today, I mean, well, the one other thing here, we did see a full-time role almost today out of Dalton Schultz, but it didn't matter just because the other two had so many of the targets. But yeah, we had 78% route participation for Robert Woods. So he was actually the lead guy. And then we had coming in behind him. Actually, no, it was just really Robert Woods. Looking down the list now, 4% Xavier Hutchinson. That was the next wide receiver behind him. So it was Robert Woods as the wide receiver 3 today.
What is dead?
8% target share. Didn't do anything with it. I mean, sorry. Bobby Trees, like at this year, I mean, at this point, like he's just, it's going to be tough sledding with these other guys that are high-end target earners out there with him.
About to say, what is dead may never die. Shout out to the artist known as Bobby Trees. Appreciate him still chugging along. Cam Akers, Dwayne, wasn't exactly ideal game script. We did see the Jacksonville holding a lead throughout a good portion of the second half, and Dari Ogunbowale continuing to make his presence felt on pass downs. Where we did get a surprise, though, was the presence of J.J. Taylor in a week where Dameon Pierce and once again Joe Mixon were inactive. Yeah,
Cam Akers had 50% of the rushing attempts, which is still good for 13 carries. I mean, so again, I think in the right game script, if for some reason you don't have Joe Mixon, like Cam Akers is going to be probably okay. I say probably because we've now had 2 weeks, right, where the game script has kind of got a little bit wonky, and that does end up hurting him. But to your point, the fact that J.J. Taylor came in and got 23% of the rushing attempts, so he had 6 carries today, that was just enough. And he was getting some critical carries down inside the 5-yard line towards the end of the game where maybe Cam Akers would have had a chance to punch one of those in for a score, Ian. And then Dari Ogunbowale was clearly the lead guy on passing downs with a 48% route participation today. So really a 3-way split in the games where we don't have Joe Mixon, not necessarily ideal.
You described that like someone who had a Cam Akers anytime touchdown ticket, Dwayne. I'm not
I
gonna
did.
lie.
I did. Oh, I had. Well, so I had. So I used a lot of the Tutu Atwell and the Rashid Shaheed stuff today, and so I mixed it in with all these different third options. One of them was a Cam Akers anytime touchdown, and so yeah, a lot of those third legs to those parlays missed. The 2 main guys did their part, Ian, but the third leg on most of them missed. I haven't even checked all the tickets. I don't know if any of them hit. I put in a ton.
Monday night, baby. That's where we make it back. Going to be a big, fun game, though, for the Texans next week against the Bills. Get your, popcorn ready for that one. Over on the other side of the football, again, a much better effort, I would say, of the Jaguars coming off just that atrocious beatdown against the Bills. That said, they are still now sitting at 0-4. So, Dwayne, I think we can save, your Trevor Lawrence, slanderous
I'm
rant.
not going to say anything.
Not even slanderous, just, speaking the truth about the guy, let's be honest. Did throw a pair of touchdowns, one each to Brian Thomas Jr. and Christian Kirk. And at a minimum, Dwayne, while Evan Ingram remains out, which doesn't seem like it's potentially going to be that much longer, we do have a clear big two in Jacksonville right now. And again, Christian Kirk and Brian Thomas Jr.
Yeah. So, and why? I mean, look, Trevor Lawrence, man, he threw for like 300. Oh, no, he didn't. He didn't throw for 300 yards today. He didn't even throw for 200 yards again. But I'm still going to refrain, Ian. I'll wait. 38% target share for Christian Kirk today. Okay, that parlayed into 19.1 fantasy points. You had a 28% target share for Mr. Brian Thomas Jr., the rookie out of LSU. He's looking more good than bad pretty much every week that we're seeing this guy out there, Ian. So he's always a threat to score a touchdown. So this it's a situation where, look, we need Trevor Lawrence to play better to really get super excited about either one of them. But I think they're both in the wide receiver 3 conversation. And either one of them, if we could see Trevor Lawrence take a step forward. And look, we've seen him do this. To be fair to Trevor Lawrence, we get mad at him at the beginning of every year. And by the end of the year, we're like, oh, well, man, maybe Trevor Lawrence is good. Look at this, averaging 250 yards a game. So, like, we know he could go through a stretch like that. And if these guys are looking anything like this, they're going to be more like wide receiver 2s instead of wide receiver 3s. Now, to your point, we're going to get Evan Ingram back. He's been out of the equation. Sounds like he does have a chance to be back next week. So we'll see what happens. So it's going to be a little bit more split up. But yeah, right now, any games we don't have Evan Ingram, these two guys are locked into wide receiver 3 status.
They do have a pretty nice fixture-upper matchup next week in the form of the Indianapolis Colts. So, hey, Dwayne,
doesn't get better, really. Yeah.
T-Law can't throw for 300 yards. Then I think we'll have an even more epic rant on the way from Mr. McFarland. Last point here, though, Tank Bigsby continuing to, and I don't even think this is an exaggeration, look very much like the best running back in Jacksonville. Because honestly, Tank Bigsby, after this one, man, he is now averaging well north of 6 yards per carry, really putting that disappointing rookie season well in the rearview mirror. So I know it caught us a little bit by surprise, Dwayne, to see Bigsby eating so heavily into ETN's workload because, let's face it, Jaguars told us it was going to happen last year, and it did not. But, man, through 4 weeks of action now, do you think we really need to start looking at this as far more of a 1A, 1B situation?
Yeah, ETN was battling an injury today. I believe it was a shoulder. So I think that was part of it. But, yeah, I mean, the last 2 games we've had Tank Bigsby. 2 weeks ago, Tank Bigsby was questionable, right, going into that game. He was limited all week in practice. He had some DNPs. Last week, I can't remember, Ian, if Tank Bigsby was listed. I know he was off the injury report by the end of the week, but I do feel like he started, for week 3. He started that week on the injury report. Then this last week, he was really off of it, right, heading into week 4. So we've seen by practice reports 2 healthy games from Tank Bigsby.
He was on it this week, to be fair. Limited.
Oh, and he was on it. Okay.
No designation, but yeah.
Okay, so he started off limited this week too. Okay, so, but by the end of the week, he was off of it. So yeah, I mean, I don't know if I can necessarily use that now, but like the 2 healthiest games probably that we've had from Tank Bigsby,
yeah,
he's been a definite factor versus Travis Etienne. And I did get to see quite a bit of this one. And he looked like the better player than Travis Etienne. He has some serious juice that I did not see last year. He started inside, got the defender, baited inside, and then he actually juked outside of this player. Not something you're used to seeing from Tank Bigsby. That's more like the Travis Etienne move, right? Get to the corner store. Like we actually saw Bigsby do that today. He had another run later that looked really good. I mean, you already mentioned he averaged 12.9 yards per carry today. So obviously he looked pretty good. 29% of his carries went for 10 plus yards today. Got 2 carries inside the 5-yard line. Travis Etienne had 0 carries inside the 5-yard line. So I absolutely think that it's something that we need to be worried about with Travis Etienne. This will not surprise me if we end up with more of a 50-50, split, just like what we talked about with Josh Jacobs. We have the same thing going on right here with Travis Etienne. And on top of all that, like we don't even really like the Jaguars offense right now. No. So that's really bad. If you drafted Travis Etienne, like your season really couldn't have started worse other than Travis Etienne getting hurt and being out for the season because he's playing like crap and the offense doesn't look very good. And Tank Bigsby is actually playing well.
Really is a situation where, I mean, the Jaguars aren't that far. And it's the NFL. So no team, I guess, is that far away, from being a quote unquote good team. But week one, Travis Etienne fumbles as he's going to the end zone. They lose the game by 3. They somehow lose to the Cleveland Browns by 5 points in week 2. And again, in this one, Dwain, you mentioned it, Bigsby had that electric 58-yard run down to the 4-yard line. What happened after that? Bigsby down to 2, Bigsby down to the 1, T-Law incompletion, and then T-Law stuffed at the goal line, turnover on down. So unfortunate for, Duval County up there, or down there, I should say. But yeah, it seems like, again, they're getting a little bit closer for as long as Doug Peterson keeps that job. I'd say the hot seat is on fire at this point, Dwayne. Doug Peterson or Nick Sirianni? Who's gone first?
I think it's Peterson.
Yeah.
Because they just paid Trevor Lawrence all that money. You draft Brian Thomas Jr. and your offense just looks like a complete turd float. Like, it's terrible. It's terrible. Yeah.
Jacksonville Jaguars, a turd float offense. Make the graphic, get it going, everybody. Guys, before we get moving on to the late afternoon games, I want to give a quick shout out to our friends over at Experian, because Experian is to your finances what FantasyLife is to your fantasy league. It is a tool and resource designed to make your life easier. The Experian app is free to download and serves as a one-stop shop for managing your financial health, because with so many spending and subscription details to track, why not let Experian handle it for you? They'll help you find and cancel your unwanted or forgotten subscriptions, helping you save money and focus on what really matters. That's right, winning your fantasy league. Download the Experian app today. Just note that results will vary. Not all subs are eligible. Savings not guaranteed. Paid membership with connected payment account is required. And you can see Experian.com for details. All right, Dwayne was hoping for a back and forth shootout here, but instead we just got a one-sided beatdown with the Commanders taking down the Arizona Cardinals 42-14. Washington closed as 3.5-point dogs, and they nearly hit the over all on their own at 49. So just Jaden Daniels, Dwayne, someone who we thought could be a mediocre real-life quarterback but still be a fantasy star. Actually, he's a real-life star and accordingly also won in Fantasyland. Pretty great.
Yeah, and to be fair, we talked about the fact that Jaden Daniels actually could be a good passer. And if that happened, you would have a top 3 fantasy quarterback. If it didn't happen, you still have a top 8 fantasy quarterback. It just so happens that he's hitting the upper end in the range of outcomes. And don't look now, but Cliff Kingsbury, got to give him a little credit. This offense looks pretty good right now, Ian. So yeah, look, Jaden Daniels, if you've got him rest of the way, you ready to lock it in, Ian? Top 3 quarterback, rest of the season, Jaden Daniels.
Who do you take ahead of him? Josh Allen? Is that it?
Yeah, I'd still take Josh Allen ahead of him.
I think Jaden Daniels over Jalen Hurts.
Yeah, I would too right now.
Lamar, probably give Lamar the benefit of the doubt.
That's where it's at. Like, I don't know. I might go Jaden Daniels. His rushing is almost as good as Lamar's, and he's a better passer.
Jaden over Kyler? I think so.
Yes.
Wow.
If you drafted Jaden Daniels, you're just happy right now. That's what's happening in fantasy football. You're super happy.
82.1% completion rate through 4 games. Yes, everyone, that is tops in NFL history. So great day to be great for Jaden Daniels and all of his fantasy managers. Also, Brian Robinson, Dwayne, 101 yards on the ground and a touchdown. Could have been even bigger day, but Jerry McNichols was also there to take away 2 touchdowns on his own. And to his credit, looked good with the opportunities, picking up 68 yards on the ground with 8 carries. So no Austin Eckler in this one. Now, it was a concussion, so we see guys normally come back from that after a week or so. That said, it was kind of, I thought, an interesting situation, Dwayne, because Eckler was ruled out so early in the week. So what did we see from this backfield split without Austin Eckler?
Yeah, 64% to Brian Robinson. That's going to put him right there in the running back 1 conversation. And he got to a 53% route participation. We still had Jeremy McNichols getting a little bit of work, but he wasn't getting as much as what we saw from Austin Eckler previously. So McNichols had 36% route participation today. But he wasn't heavily targeted. He just made some big plays. With the opportunities that he had, you have to say Jeremy McNichols went out there and really looked good. Scored 20.4 fantasy points today. 20.3 for Brian Robinson Jr. He outscored him, Ian, by, a tenth. So way to go, Jeremy McNichols. But yeah, Brian Robinson, if we have another game where we don't have Austin Eckler, I mean, we already moved him way up the ranks. He was a borderline running back 1 for us this week. Have to look at the matchup, but depending on that, he could be in the running back 1 conversation. If not, he's going to be a borderline running back 1.
Terry McLaurin also found the end zone on a pearl down the middle from Jaden Daniels. 7 catches, 452 yards on a team-high 10 targets. Also had Olamide Zaccheaus popping off, Dwain, with 85 yards and 6 catches in his own right. So, man, you would think with Jaden Daniels doing all these great things, we could find a second fantasy viable pass catcher, but so far, not quite looking that way, huh?
Yeah, and it's really kind of Zach Ertz has been the most consistent other component, and today he only had 5.7 or 7.2 PPR fantasy points. But when you look at Terry McLaurin, he's doing his thing. Olamide Zaccheaus, he only had a 31% route participation, right? So, I mean, he came through on that small amount of plays, but really his playing time has been trending down, since week 1. The guy that has been trending up because he was a late offseason addition or right at the preseason after cuts from the Houston Texans is Noah Brown. And he got to a 72% route participation today, which was the second highest on the team. He had a 13% target share, but it's a guy that we saw flash last year whenever we did not have Nico Collins, Tank Dell, or one of those two guys was missing from the Texans offense. And we've got Jaden Daniels looking pretty good. So Noah Brown, if you're in a really deep, gross sicko kind of league, it's a guy you might min bid this week or, put a little bit on. He's a guy that you could, be starting in a few weeks. I will say, I don't know how much I trust it because they rotate so many guys. Like Luke McCaffrey's the other guy. He was at 47% today. But Noah Brown over these 4 games has gotten higher in route participation every single week. And today he looked like the wide receiver 2 as far as playing time.
Box score would have been a lot nicer if he got some fantasy points for drawing that long defensive pass interference penalty, but that is not the world we live in, and honestly, I think I'm okay with that. Over with the Arizona Cardinals, down to 1-3, Dwain. As lethal as this offense did look against the Los Angeles Rams, are you starting to be a little bit concerned that that was maybe the outlier? Because let's face it now, 3 of the 4 games this season, Kyler Murray and company haven't exactly looked like world beaters.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to worry about it too much just because, it's such a consolidated offense, right?
It was a great matchup.
Yeah, it was a great matchup. But, I mean, James Conner still came through with 18 fantasy points today. You're happy. I mean, James Conner is a borderline running back 1, for the season. And I would have a hard time ranking him as anything other than that. And then if you look at the receiving game today, we had Marvin Harrison Jr. Yeah, 15.5 PPR points is a disappointment after what we've seen can happen to the Commanders. Like you were hoping for a 30-point outburst, but still 15.5 in a bad game. He had a 27% target share today. So he was out there doing his thing. So I'm okay with it. And Trey McBride will eventually get back. It's really those 3 players, right? And Kyler Murray. So I think we're going to be okay. We'll see what happens with Kyler. Didn't look very good today. Didn't look good last week either, to be honest. So Kyler is a little bit more shaky, but we know he's going to score his fantasy points because he's a dual threat option, right? He's going to run around plenty. He's going to end up scoring some rushing touchdowns, not on the level as Jalen Hurts and Josh Allen, but, he's going to score somewhere between 5 and 7, on the season, 4 to 6, something like that. So I think we're still okay. I think the bigger question is for people that care about them as an NFL team, are the Cardinals actually going to be a team that can compete in that division? We thought after, first couple of weeks, maybe they could. Right now, not looking that way so much.
Long story short, hat tip, I should say, to Cliff Kingsbury and Zach Ertz on getting their revenge game wins. And I know some people, including myself, has been throwing some shade at Kingsbury's quote-unquote college offense. Well, you know what, Dwain? If it's a college offense, that means you barely ever freaking punt the football. I guess you should keep running it at the professional level as well. Another late afternoon contest, a beatdown, I should say. The 49ers took down the Patriots 30-13, covering as 10.5-point favorites. The over did cash just by a hair at 42.5. So with the 49ers, Dwain, we did have the return of one Deebo Samuel. Didn't have the biggest box score, but still 5 touches for 72 yards, including a nice little 53-yard catch over his shoulder deep downfield, proving that, yes, Deebo can get some separation from time to time out there. So did we, Dwain, see Deebo back in his usual full-time role in his first game back?
Not quite, but I mean, 83% route participation. It wasn't like they were really trying to limit him in a big way. 19% target share. So I think it's a positive thing. Gave you 10.2 fantasy points. Obviously, you were hoping for more than that from him, but it looks like the next game we see Deebo, I would guess that he's going to be pretty close to 100% after what he did today.
Juwan Jennings, another nice game, 3 catches, 88 yards, including a ridiculous 45-yard catch over his shoulder. And accordingly, Dwain, another dud in the box score for Brandon Ayuk, just 2 catches for 48 yards. So We've been waiting, man. We've had some winnable enough matchups. I know this one with Christian Gonzalez, not exactly easy, and they're going to go ahead and get the Cardinals here in week 5. So maybe that's the day, but still not worrying about Brandon Ayuk because, yes, we do have a nice little track record that does extend longer than the 4 games of 2024.
Yeah, look, and it's also it's the nature of the beast. When you draft these 49ers guys, like it's spin the roulette wheel. We don't know which one's going off each week, and each week somebody gets left out. So it was Brandon Ayuk. I think he's still going to be fine. We know he's a good player, but you're going to have some ups and downs with a player like this. I will say with Jauan Jennings, route participation came down to 67%, so was really just more back into playing that slot role this week. He did lead the team with a 23% target share, so Jauan Jennings is doing his best, Ian, to make sure that he stays on the field. But I just have a feeling like that's just gonna fade away right over time. Now, Deebo Samuel has a long history of injuries. George Kittle has a long history of injuries. Jauan Jennings is showing us enough. If he keeps playing this way, we have to eventually adjust our priors on what's his talent level. The problem is we've got a pretty long history of his talent level, and there's never been anything close to this. Not saying a guy couldn't suddenly turn into this player, but I think really to ever feel comfortable about Jauan Jennings being in your lineup again after this weekend, you're going to need an injury, on the 49ers or major bye week problems. You're playing in a really deep league.
Speaking of injuries, Kittle did get banged up towards the end of the first half with a rib issue, but returned in the second half and didn't seem any worse for the wear. Looked just fine out there in the first half, man. Had a ridiculous touchdown in the corner of the end zone. Great throw by Brock Purdy as well, but Kittle skied up there with 3 defenders around him, came down with the touchdown.
Held 2 plays before just to cancel Jordan Mason. Who did that though last week? I can't remember.
It was Deebo on Mason.
It was Deebo that did it. Yeah, and it was to Jordan Mason.
49er on 49er crime going on. Yes, it was a 38-yard touchdown on Mason. I thought a pretty iffy holding call on George.
Oh, me too. Yeah, I did too. He was holding, but really, this is every play kind of stuff.
They hold every play. What I've always thought is if you're holding them with your hands tight, it's okay. Once that player starts getting away from the body, you got to let go, which Kittle did in that situation. So also had a Kyle Juszczyk touchdown nullified on an illegal shift. I did not catch who the culprit was on that one, but yes, eventually Kittle did indeed get his touchdown out there. So huge game for Jordan Mason regardless, 123 yards and a touchdown on the ground, 37 more receiving yards. Got some news, Dwayne, that we should see McCaffrey back sometime in early November. But yes, guys, until then, Jordan Mason's certainly going to continue to be ranked likely inside the position's top 5, regardless of the matchup. Over on the Patriots sideline, we had, another overall rough performance from this offense. Antonio Gibson, game high, 67 receiving yards, had a really nice catch and run of 50 yards. And a good reminder in some of those deeper leagues, guys, that as bad as this offense is, should something happen to Ramondre Stevenson, it would be Antonio Gibson suddenly leaping into that RB1 role and someone that at a minimum could provide us some solid weeks, especially once those buys start coming around. And honestly, Dwayne, as long as Gibson starts doing his thing, and hey, don't just take my word for it, guys. Look at all the advanced stats stuff. They tell us that Gibson has been playing some good football. Meanwhile, Mondre has fumbled not once, not twice, not 3, but 4 times in 4 weeks. Did we see any sort of doghouse, sort of demotion for Ramondre after yet another fumble, Dwayne?
Yeah, only 54% of the rushing attempts today, 57% of the snaps. So that stronghold he seemed to have on all the utilization, and we were worried about the quality of the team. Well, now you're really having to worry about 2 things. How strong is his hold over the backfield? They obviously just paid the guy, Ian. He's got a long deal here. Mm-hmm. He's going to be the lead back. But Antonio Gibson, he's a good enough player to force us into being something where you don't have to give all the carries to Ramondre and all the opportunities, which you really need on an offense as bad as the Patriots. So Ramondre, hopefully a couple weeks ago, you guys got to sell high. We were definitely recommending that. But if not, right now, you're just going to kind of have to sit. You're going to have to kind of wait and see what happens with Ramondre Stevenson. But yeah, just a guy that he needs 65-70% of the rushing attempts on this team to really feel comfortable putting him in your starting lineup. So, he's a borderline running back 2 already. He went from being a guy that people thought was a running back 1 to now you're like, is he a running back 3 or is he a running back 2?
Offensive line certainly not doing anybody in New England any favors. Jacoby sacked 6 times on the afternoon. And again, those rushing lanes certainly not all that wide for the backs as well. So did see Jalen Polk, Dwain, have a team high 7 targets. Box score could have looked even bigger, man. It was a 4th down heave, and he made a ridiculous catch on the sideline in a contested situation. Unfortunately, was rolled just out of bounds. So did we see anything there, or at this point, every single page? Oh, okay, go ahead.
87% route participation. That's he moved into the lead. So Jalen Polk will get an upgrade in the utilization report tomorrow. It's still the Patriots, but eventually we're going to see Drake May, guys, and maybe there's a chance these two can really form a connection. 22% target share also led the team. For right now, Ian, even though looks like he might be leaning into a starting role, it's tough to say that we would grade him as anything other than like at the highest a wide receiver 4, probably still a wide receiver 5, but at least the door's open, right? You know that he's getting on the field. That's going to give him a chance to earn more opportunities. And the target competition is really low. We've got KJ Osborne running around out here with a 67% route participation. We've got Austin Hooper running around. We've got Tyquan Thornton still getting playing time. Demario Douglas is really the only other guy that's going to get targets, and he didn't really get many targets today. So yeah, there's a big opportunity here for Jalen Polk, just as far as becoming the number 1 for the Patriots. You tell me, Ian Hartitz, what that's worth. I don't know.
I was going to say, if you would have gone anything ahead of wide receiver 4, Dwain, I would have definitely checked yourself before you wrecked yourself in that situation. Last note, though, man, I am old enough to remember 2 weeks ago when Hunter Henry had 8 catches for 109 yards. Is this more of a split between him and Austin Hooper now?
74% route participation for Hunter Henry, which was still well ahead. You know, so Austin Hooper at 44% today. So Hunter Henry still the tight end 1 for the Patriots, mid-range tight end 2 for your fantasy team.
I think that about covers it on the New England Patriots. Some might even argue, Dwain, we went 5 minutes too long on that sad squad. So 2 more games. Appreciate you guys joining us, as always, on the Fantasy Life show. The Chiefs took down the Chargers 17-10. They pushed as 7-point favorites. The under cashed at 41.5. And yeah, Dwain, you know what also, went down in this one was most of our fantasy teams, because Rashee Rice suffered a knee injury. That did not look good. Patrick Mahomes threw a pick and was so mad that he decided to take out his wide receiver 1 on the same play. Andy Reid afterwards asked if he could say anything about the severity. Quote, "No, but it is not good." So no, Dwain, it is not good.
Yeah. Look, I mean, there's nothing we can do about it other than, sit here and hold these bags that are heavy and cry. Yeah. But Travis Kelce, if you drafted Travis Kelce, he had a 32% target share today. So you immediately remove Rashee Rice from the equation, who was really getting all the targets. Now they're going to Travis Kelce. We saw Xavier Worthy get an 85% route participation. That was a high on the season for him. Still was not a high-end target earner, Ian. 14% of the targets. He did come through with a long play where he cooked someone, ended up with 16.3 PPR points on the day. So those are your 2 upgrades. Xavier Worthy and more of something closer to a full-time role, even if he's not a high-end target earner, knowing you have Patrick Mahomes, that you get that one-on-one in a game. Mahomes is the guy we trust the most to find it, Ian. Buy a little bit of time to actually see it all unfolding, see it happening. He's the guy I think we would put most of our trust in out of any quarterback in the league, to be the guy that can make that happen. And he's going to see it, and he's going to hit that throw, and it's going to give you fantasy points. So the door is open there for Worthy if he can improve as a target earner. And here's the thing, Ian, once they have a week to scheme this now, and it's not Rashee Rice, because Rashee Rice was getting a lot of the motions, a lot of the slot stuff, a lot of the design stuff around the line of scrimmage. The question will be, will they bolster Xavier Worthy's role now by saying, okay, we're now going to do some of those things with you? And if they do, that could really unlock something for Xavier Worthy. So I would say I would be trying to buy Xavier Worthy. I wouldn't want to overpay for him, but I do think there's a chance here that we see the Chiefs actually try to scheme him up a lot more, because after him, Ian, man, it's Justin Watson. Had a 74% route participation today, but we know he's not a high-end target earner. We've seen it for multiple years. He's not going to do anything, guys. He's going to give you an occasional spike game. Sky Moore went right out there and probably could have caught a touchdown pass, or at least he definitely had a pass that should have been a first down that he just dropped. So Sky Moore not doing anything. Mecole Hardman, we've seen this show. We've been there. We know who Mecole Hardman is. He's not going to do anything. The one other name, maybe Ian, Juju Smith-Schuster. He had a 53% route participation today. So my guess is he would be the other guy that's going to be most likely to try to replace some of the production from Rashee Rice. It's going to be nothing like it We saw Rashee Rice play. We saw Juju Smith-Schuster play the Rashee Rice role the year before Rashee Rice got there. And it wasn't Rashee Rice because that's just, he's not as talented. But he could end up being like a wide receiver 4 or something maybe. So I would say it's Kelsey clearly is the biggest beneficiary. Worthy clearly the number 2. But the other, maybe you squint and you're like, oh, okay, maybe this guy could do a little bit of something, is Juju Smith-Schuster.
We did see last night in Sunday Night Football. I mean, Rashee Rice needed a breather, and it looked like Juju literally came in, ran his route for him, and did find his way into the end zone. So I think we all agree that Juju is not a very good NFL wide receiver in the year 2024. But hey, Dwayne, volume is volume, and certainly we can use that when possible. So now, guys, 14 straight games with the Chiefs without scoring at least 30 points, 5th longest streak in the NFL, behind only the Broncos, the Falcons, the Patriots, and in first place at 39 games, your Tennessee Titans. Here's to hoping that Will Levis and company can break through that soon. Only other note on the Chargers, Dwayne, they will be getting a week 5 bye to get healthy, which lo and behold, they certainly need. Obviously playing this one without their offensive tackles, Justin Herbert banged up, amongst others on defense. So really didn't see a ton here other than Ladd McConkey making, some good plays for himself. 5 catches, 67 yards, and a touchdown on 7 targets. If you had to place a chip on a pass catcher out of Los Angeles the rest of the way, Dwayne, would it be Mr. McConkey?
Yeah, it's probably McConkey. I mean, and that's kind of where we've been at all along. I wouldn't totally say that we're, Quentin Johnston. Like, I don't think we can ignore what he did, like through the first, 3 games. He had a bad game today. He had a 4%, target. Well, what was his target share today? Sorry, I'm over. He had 4% of the rushing attempts today.
Oh.
And if I flip back over, because we got to go back to the Chiefs for a second, because their backfield definitely had a shakeup today. But Ladd McConkey, 26% target share, gave you 17.7 fantasy points today. 86% route participation. So it was a situation where it looked like, the Chargers did try to throw the ball a little bit more today. So Ladd McConkey, number 1, Quentin Johnston, number 2, Josh Palmer right there, number 3, but we're not super excited really about any of them because they want to run the ball so much. So it's kind of tough. Ladd McConkey, wide receiver 4 territory. That's about the best I can do.
You mentioned the shakeup to the Chiefs backfield. On the opening drive of the game, we did see Carson Steele lose a fumble. Now they went back to him. It wasn't his final carry of the game, but Dwayne, regardless, Kareem Hunt wound up being the leader of this ever-evolving Chiefs committee.
Yeah, so this one is interesting, and I was watching that game whenever we saw the Carson Steele fumble. And in the past, we've seen Andy Reid see someone fumble like that and not make the switch, but it pretty much did go to Kareem Hunt. To your point, Carson Steele did get back in the game, man, but a 19% snap share after pretty much dominating, having like a 60% snap share the week before, or it might have been higher than that. I don't have it in front of me, but he was the clear lead back the week before. So Kareem Hunt, 43% snap share today. He had 61% of the team's rushing attempts. Samaje Perine, 41% snap share, 22% of the rushing attempts. And he was the guy out there more on passing downs, 44%. So it looked more like Kareem Hunt playing the Carson Steele role. Samaje Perine kind of still just playing the role that he played from the week before. To your point, Ian, I don't know. Like, will it stick? Will it not stick? I'm not real sure, but the latest data point we have is Kareem Hunt looks like he might be playing over Carson Steele.
So Kareem Hunt must have gotten the goal line touchdown. No, wait, that was actually Samaje Perine, who would have been probably our 3rd guess at that point to score, but that's just fantasy football for you, Dwayne. So Kareem Hunt, someone you're overly excited about on the waiver wire, because we should be getting Clyde Edwards-Helaire back here before too long.
Exactly. God, it's so gross. They're just going to rotate all these guys. Yeah. They're just going to rotate them all. Like, if Kareem Hunt had shown anything in the last couple of years was still looking viable, we might be more excited. He averaged 4.9 yards per carry today. Like, we'll watch the film on him and see what we think. Like, I didn't see all of Kareem Hunt's carry. So I'm going to reserve judgment. First pass, I'm going to say no. I'm not super excited about it, but I want to watch him tomorrow.
I will not reserve judgment. He looked mediocre out there. And the number 29.
Then you already saw him. Okay, great.
Yeah, it reminded me of like Shaq on the Celtics. I almost made that meme out there, but certainly not the same player that we saw back in, his heyday with Kansas City. Takes us to our final game, Dwayne. The Raiders took down the Browns 20-16. Raiders closed as 2.5-point home dogs, I should say. The under cashed here at 37 points. So really nothing overly good to say about this Las Vegas Raiders offense. Minshew only threw for 130 yards. And while the team did rush for 152, most of that was by Alexander Madison on just 5 carries, 60 yards. Zamir White, meanwhile, 50 yards on 17 carries. And Dwain, a fumble that quite possibly could have sent him straight into Antonio Pierce's doghouse.
How do you score 3 fantasy points in a PPR league on 17 carries?
Did he have that many? He lost a fumble. Oh, okay. That includes a fumble. Yeah.
17 carries. And he scored 3 PPR points. How does this happen?
It was not good.
I'm genuinely confused.
He broke off a 17-yard run where he got tackled. It seemed like he might have had a lane where, honestly, if he made one more guy miss, it could have been like an 80-yard house call, but he didn't. So here we are. I mean, look, it's not like we were excited to play Zamir White this week anyway, but man, I guess it's Mattis season. Is that a thing? Can we say that?
I don't know if it's Mattis season or not. I mean, he had 19% of the carries. I think it's avoid the Raiders season. I mean, Jesus. Dylan Lobby at some point is just going to take this backfield over. That's my take.
Dylan Lobb still waiting in the wings because, we got to get Amir Abdullah involved, although he did not record any touches today. Yeah, just a sad situation in Las Vegas. No Devontae Adams with a hamstring injury. Many believe it to be of the phantom variety. Personally, I think Adams is enough of a gamer to not necessarily, put that implication out there. But regardless, Dwain, Jacoby Myers, 5 catches, 49 yards. Trey Tucker, 5 catches, 41 yards. Did one of them score? No, because that reverse had to go to DJ Turner. Yeah, we're just not feeling overly good about anyone in Las Vegas except Dwayne Brock Bowers. But I guess we can't have nice things. 19 scoreless yards. Are we downgrading Brock? It has been back-to-back disappointing efforts after a world beating for 2 weeks.
No, 81% route participation. I mean, it's just the ups and downs of a season. Like, we know he's a good player. I'm still fine with it. The main thing is seeing like his routes actually steady. Now, we didn't have Michael Mayer today, so we would have expected his routes to be better today. Michael Mayer also missed this game.
Think that about sums it up for the Raiders. On the Browns side of the football, just 16 points, but man, I thought they got completely screwed on that 82-yard touchdown from Deshaun Watson to Amari Cooper. Ticky-tack hold on the center. And again, just
that was terrible.
Yeah, all day long, these refs, man, making madness go. So really was a horrendous revenge game for Amari Cooper. Watson's lone interception bounced directly off of Cooper's chest. And there was also a situation where Cooper did get open deep, but miscommunication led to just the ball that went the wrong way, and it's tough to tell who was exactly at fault. So, guys, again, Watson didn't necessarily play well, but at least for this game, man, I actually would say the offensive line and Cooper were the more primary culprits. But honestly, we're grading everyone in Cleveland on a scale from bad to worse. So feel free to blame whoever you want. Did see Jerome Ford and Deontay Foreman get close to scoring, and I guess, Dwayne, that would be the main conversation point because we have seen Jerome Ford have some pretty nice utilization over the last 3 or 4 weeks this year. It'd just be a lot cooler if the Browns could, score some more touchdowns from time to time.
I would love to tell you, but like my whole screen in front of me, you're moving, but like my tool that I use to look at the back end data is not working. So I can't tell you how much Jerome Ford did, unfortunately. But yeah, I mean, we saw him do better last week. I saw him have the big play at the end of the game. Like, it wasn't necessarily going that well for him until the end of the game. So I don't know what the exact splits were. Oh, it's working. So let's see if I can make that.
Did have 17.
Keep talking.
I got this, bro. 17 combined carries and targets for Jerome Ford and just 5 for Deontay Foreman. So again, hasn't really been a matter of Ford not making the most out of his opportunities. Certainly been a bit boom or busty over these past 2 seasons, but just week to week in an offense that we don't expect much from, even with RB1 level utilization, going to be tough to get, Ford higher than more of a low end RB2. So Dwayne, are you ready to grace us with some utilization goodness?
No, still not working, but I would just say, hey, real quick, what about going back to the Raiders, Trey Tucker, 25% target share today. He scored over 16 fantasy points. Yes, we didn't have Devontae Adams, but are you buying into
he did have a touchdoal
noise? Yeah, dude.
He had a rush.
He looked good again. That's 2 weeks in a row that Trey Tucker's looked good. He's definitely got some juice. So I was wanting your thoughts on any of the stuff with Adams, because obviously the trade speculation immediately pops up as soon as he misses a game and he pulls up. It's a late weak practice injury that causes him to miss the game.
Now, Trey Tucker's kind of got a little bit of that, Tutu Atwell in him. He's a little bit bigger. Who isn't bigger than Tutu Atwell? Let's be honest. But man, the dude can fly. It's just the thing. Like, yeah, I really wish Gardner Minshew wasn't always the one being asked to throw him the deep ball. So I guess
he had a 25% target share today.
What was Jacoby's though? Like, we're certainly ranking Jacoby higher than him.
It was 42%.
Yeah. Jacoby's
but I'm still saying 25% target share for a second-year player that looks really fast is like pretty.
He does.
That's I wouldn't ignore it. It'd be my point. But obviously, Devontae Adams has to be gone for it to even be a chance.
Raiders take on the Broncos next week, Dwayne. Let's say Devontae Adams is out again. Jacoby Myers, wide receiver 4. Tucker, boomer bust, wide receiver 5.
It's Broncos next week?
Yeah. Not easy.
You're not playing either one of them.
And Mile High. No, we're not playing them, but we got to make the ranks. They make the world go round. You know how it goes.
Yeah, they do make the world go round. Jacoby Myers, no Devontae Adams next week. Yeah, wide receiver 4 is like the highest I can go, just because of freaking Patrick Surtain shuts down everyone.
Not great, Dwayne. But you know what is great? The fact that we got another week of football upon us and another double header on Monday night. So that's going to wrap up this week 4 recap. But Dwayne, people can find all the utilization numbers that you were just talking about over on FantasyLife.com, I believe as early as 8 a.m. tomorrow morning. Pretty cool.
8 a.m. tomorrow morning, guys. You can go check out the utilization report. All the utilization scores will be updated. You'll be able to see those for the season. You can look at them in the game log view. I will be writing the utilization report, which will come out first thing on Tuesday. And Ian, you going to be doing some sheesh?
We are always sheeshing over at the Hartitz household, Dwayne. So sheeshing, we'll have my weekly manifesto up on Wednesday. And then something cool in my Fantasy Life Chronicle series I will bark about later in the week as well. So, of course, you can catch myself, Dwayne, and the rest of our Fantasy Life crew here on the Fantasy Life Show, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, 9 a.m. Eastern. Come hang out, and we'll try to help get you guys one step closer to that fantasy championship and maybe have some fun along the way. So for Dwayne, I'm Ian. Thanks again for tuning in to